Chapter 1177. Huh. Why did Big Sister Shui disappear in the middle of the night last night? Hu Feiyun asked curiously the next morning. Shui Yinyu was eating, and she instantly coughed when she heard this. She rolled her eyes at Ling Han. It was all this guy's fault. He called her out in the middle of the night to do some shameful things. Ling Han couldn't help but smile and said, "You're just a child, so don't ask so many questions. Just eat your food." Hu Feiyun pouted. Why did everyone treat her like a child? Big Sister was like this, and now Ling Han was also like this. She was furious. After eating breakfast, they continued on their journey. There were not only creepy things like the misty soul-capturing flower and Saint Beetles here, but also various godly medicines. Otherwise, the misty soul-capturing flower wouldn't have attracted so many people, because everyone thought that it was a godly medicine. They also discovered a few godly medicines along the way. Unfortunately, they were a step too late, and the godly medicine had already been plucked. Some people were crude, and not only plucked the medicine but also destroyed its roots. However, some people were more careful, and were careful when plucking the medicine, leaving the roots intact. They could wait for another 100 years or even the 100 years after that to pluck it. Ling Han didn't hold back. When he found the roots, he would directly dig them into the Black Tower. Only in the Black Tower could the effects of the godly medicine be maximized. The smile on his face became brighter and brighter. This was really a profitable trip. If he could have such harvests every day, then to say nothing of other things, merely this trip of plucking medicine would be a huge profit. However, his luck was sometimes good, and he could encounter 7 or 8 godly medicines in a day. Sometimes it wasn't so good, and he would encounter countless godly medicines in a day. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. Ding ding ding. The intense sound of weapons clashing came from ahead, and one could even see flashes of divine light soaring into the sky. It was clear that the battle was intense. Let's go. Hu Feiyun was immediately interested. Shui Yinyu's curiosity wasn't so strong, and she said, "Let's not be nosy." However, Hu Feiyun had already turned around and was running in that direction. She was extremely excited. They hadn't experienced any battles in these 7 days, so the 9th king's heart that yearned for excitement was completely out of control. Ling Han and Shui Yinyu exchanged a look, and could only follow after them. However, they weren't afraid. Sun Moon tier elites couldn't enter this place, so Ling Han was practically invincible. At the very least, they didn't have to worry about their safety. In front of them was a field of rubble. After passing through the rubble, both sides of the battle appeared in front of them. On one side there were 7 people, and on the other side there were 25 people. They formed an encirclement, trapping the 7 people inside. "Hand over the 9-layer divine lotus, and we can spare your lives," one of the people surrounding them said. Bullshit. Among the 7 trapped, there was a beautiful woman with long red hair. She was dressed in an extremely bold and unrestrained manner. She wore a shoulder-bearing armor that revealed her 2 jade-like arms, and even part of her towering peaks could be seen. The armor on his lower body only covered his thighs, revealing 2 shockingly long thighs that were perfectly round and straight. However, her skin was not white. Instead, it was the color of wheat. Like a female leopard, she exuded astonishing vitality. She humped and said, "You didn't kill us because you're afraid that we'll destroy the 9-layer divine lotus. If we hand over the 9-layer divine lotus, we'll die." Ha 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 ha. The people surrounding them all laughed loudly. "Don't worry, Leader Meng. Everyone else will die, but you definitely won't." One of the people surrounding them laughed lewdly, and said, "I've long heard of Leader Meng's beauty. If we don't have a taste of Leader Meng, wouldn't it be too much of a waste?" He. Ha ha ha. The people surrounding them laughed without restraint. The mystery realm was so big, and the chances of others discovering their evil deeds were infinitely low. Even if they were discovered, they could just kill them all together. How despicable. Hu Feiyun couldn't help but draw her sword and rush out. Evil thieves' sword. She charged out alone, and the people surrounding them faltered for a moment before bursting into laughter. It was just a little girl. Wasn't this like sending a lamb into a tiger's den? She's also a beauty. Perfect, there's only one Leader Meng. How long do we have to wait in line? Even if the 3 of us go together, we'll have to wait for 7 rounds. With another beauty, we'll only have to wait for 3 rounds. Huh. Boss, there's another beauty over there. These people's gazes landed on Shui Yinyu, and they immediately couldn't help but drool. This beauty was obviously even more beautiful, and she had a seductive charm that could make one's soul go crazy. If they could have sex with this beauty even once, they would be willing to shorten their lifespan by 100 years. Oh, these people all howled like wolves, incredibly excited. You're all thinking too much. Ling Han's feet flew, and he had already arrived in front of these people. He said calmly, "Scram, and I can spare your lives." He wasn't a bloodthirsty person, and he didn't know what conflict there was between the two of them, so he didn't want to kill them all. "Brat, you're very arrogant, aren't you?" A brawny man in his 30s walked out. His clothes were unbuttoned, and a round belly was revealed. His face was full of muscles, and he held a large saber in his hand. His killing intent was very heavy. "Handsome. Thank you for your righteous rescue. However, these people are not to be trifled with. Hurry up and leave while you still have the chance." The red-haired beauty called out loudly. "You've already gotten involved in this mess and you still want to leave?" One of the people surrounding them sneered. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "They're just some trash, what's there to be smug about? You're courting death." The big-bellied saber-wielding man's eyes were cold. Taking advantage of the moment when Ling Han was speaking, he suddenly leaped and slashed at Ling Han. He used his full power right from the start. Divine patterns intertwined, and this saber was also covered in divine light, exuding a frightening coldness. Pooh! A cold light flashed, and the divine demon sword had already appeared. It slashed out on its own, and easily sliced through the opponent's saber. Then it followed the momentum and sliced the big-bellied saber-wielding man in two. Blood splattered and internal organs danced wildly. Gasp! Everyone was inexplicably horrified, frightened by this sword. It was too terrifying. How could the might of this strike be so domineering? Wang, the divine demon sword, hovered beside Ling Han. Its blade was not stained with blood, yet it exuded a frightening murderous aura. As its level increased, the might exuded by this divine sword also became more and more frightening. One had to realize that devouring gold metal could mature into divine metal. Even if it hadn't reached this level yet, it was who knew how many times stronger than ordinary godly metal. "Sir, how should I address you?" one of the people surrounding them asked in a deep voice. He didn't dare to underestimate Ling Han anymore. Their group was all in the business of robbery, and they had spent money to buy a few spots to enter this place. They had also robbed a few people, and thus had a total of 25 spots. Even though they weren't prodigies, after countless years of cultivation, they had all reached the consummate level of the mountain river tier. In their eyes, wouldn't 25 people be invincible if they joined forces? However, Ling Han had killed one of their companions with a single strike, so they didn't dare to be careless anymore. They finally realized that there were still prodigies in this world, and their battle prowess was far beyond their imagination. Chapter 1178. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and he said, "You don't have the right to know my name. Boss, don't waste words with him. Kill him." A thief shouted, appearing extremely arrogant. The thief leader hesitated slightly before retrieving a pill bottle. However, he didn't immediately open it. Instead he said, "Sir, it's not too late for you to leave now. However, you have to leave these 2 women behind." He pointed at Shui Yinyu and Hu Feiyun. Seeing the killing intent flashing across Ling Han's face, he immediately said, "Sir, do you know what this purple pattern mountain river pill is? It can increase my battle prowess by 3 stars. I'm already at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. If I increase my battle prowess by 3 stars, do you think you'll still be a match for me?" He had spent a large sum of money to purchase this pill bottle, and there were only 2 of them. Thus, unless he had no other choice, he really didn't want to use it. This was a powerful weapon, and using it as a deterrent was far more effective than consuming it. Ling Han couldn't help but burst into laughter. He really couldn't help it. Shaking his head, he said, "Say, how narrow-minded are you? Do you think you can defeat everyone in the mountain river tier just because you've increased your battle prowess by 3 stars? You dare to underestimate me?" the thief leader said angrily. Ling Han moved. Wang, a terrifying aura descended, and the thief leader's face instantly paled. He couldn't even move a finger. How powerful was the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier? Naturally, they could crush those at the consummate level. Moreover, this thief leader was only an ordinary mountain river tier cultivator. He couldn't even be considered a one-star genius. The gap between them was like the gap between heaven and earth. Ling Han grabbed lightly and took the pill bottle. He smiled and said, "It's too much of a waste for you to eat. Why don't you sell it? It should be enough to exchange for one tael of level 4 godly metal." The thieves were all dumbfounded. Their boss had actually been subdued before he could even make a move. Previously, they could still say that the big-bellied man had been careless, or perhaps it was because his opponent's sword was too powerful, which was why he had been sliced in two. But now, all of them felt an instinctive fear, and their bodies were trembling. "Mercy, mercy." The bandit leader immediately put down his dignity and begged Ling Han. He was very realistic. Ling Han revealed a dense killing intent and said, "Don't you want me to leave the woman behind?" No, I wouldn't dare." The bandit leader hurriedly shook his head. "Haha, that's because I'm strong enough. If I wasn't as strong as you, my woman would be taken by you," said Ling Han indifferently. "Ling Han, I'm not your woman." Hu Feiyun raised her hand to clarify. Ling Han sighed and said, "Can't you see that I'm in the middle of showing off? You have to interrupt me at this time and ruin the atmosphere." "Oh." Hu Feiyun nodded weakly, and lowered her head to play with her fingers. "I'm not someone who likes to kill, but unfortunately, I can't find any reason to sympathize with you." Ling Han raised his right hand, and the divine demon sword also started to move. The tip of the sword swayed back and forth on each of the bandit leaders' bodies. "Let's go." These bandits were also ruthless, and when they discovered that Ling Han had no intention of letting them go, their ferocious nature flared up. They no longer had any hope of getting lucky, and they wanted to fight to the death. For people like them, if there was a chance of survival, they definitely wouldn't mind pretending to be weak. However, if their chance of survival was cut off, they would become extremely vicious and evil people. They definitely wouldn't obediently accept death. They put down the red-haired beauty and the others, and charged toward Ling Han. If Ling Han didn't die, then all of them would die. Ling Han smirked coldly and spread his fingers. Xiao xiao xiao. 24 streaks of divine light shot out. Pew 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 pew. The heads of the 24 bandits all exploded, and they died a clean and crisp death. The red-haired beauty and the others were all dumbstruck, and they looked at Ling Han in disbelief. What kind of freakish battle prowess was this? Didn't this place forbid Sun Moon tier cultivators? However, wasn't this battle prowess at the Sun Moon tier? A whole 24 cultivators at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier had been insta-killed just like that. Who could believe this? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "No need to thank me." After saying this, he pulled Shui Yinyu away. "Wait for me." Hu Feiyun faltered for a moment, and then hurriedly followed after them. Hey. The red-haired beauty also came to her senses and ran over. "Hey handsome, why are you walking so fast? Are you worried that I'll eat you?" She even winked at Ling Han as she said this. Ling Han was astonished. This woman was too careless, wasn't she? She had almost been killed just then, and now she was actually in the mood to make eyes at him. "Are you alright?" Shui Yinyu asked. Sigh. The red-haired beauty sighed and said, "We've really suffered heavy losses this time." She immediately began to talk, not caring whether Ling Han and the others were interested or not. As it turned out, they were a mercenary group that worked for money. However, they hadn't been hired this time. Instead, they had paid a large sum of money to come here on their own. Their goal was a treasure trove here. They had been hired to protect a person in the past 100 years, and during that time they had discovered that treasure trove. In the end, they had suffered heavy casualties and even their employer had died. However, they still couldn't forget about that treasure trove, and thus came here again. However, they discovered a 9-layer celestial lotus along the way. After paying the price of 4 deaths, they managed to pluck the lotus from the claws of the demonic beast that was guarding the divine herb. Who would have thought that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, and they ended up being targeted by a group of thieves. If it weren't for the fact that they were afraid that they would destroy the 9-layer divine lotus, The red-haired beauty and the others definitely wouldn't have been able to last until Ling Han and the others arrived. Handsome, you're so powerful, so why don't we cooperate? The red-haired beauty extended an invitation. That's right, my surname is Mengwei. Ling Han grumbled in his mind. Are we working together to obtain the treasure? It's like you're going to eat me up. How about half for each side? Mengwei was very enthusiastic. Although you're powerful, we're the ones who provided the location of the treasure. Hence, half for each side shouldn't be too much, right? Ling Han sighed and said, I haven't agreed yet. It's fine. I'll think about it and agree. Mengwei Hao laughed heartily, not minding that her breasts were shaking, as if they were about to jump out of her armor. Ling Han's expression turned serious as he said, What kind of treasure is it? Tell me. Mengwei revealed an as expected smile and said, That should be the residence of an alchemist. Hence, there are many alchemical pills here, and perhaps even some pill recipes. Let's each make a copy, and we'll definitely make a huge profit if we sell them. Ling Han's eyes also lit up, attracted by the word alchemist. He nodded and said, All right, then let's cooperate. We'll split the elixir equally, and we'll each make a copy of the elixir recipe. Deal. Mengwei stretched out her hand. Ling Han patted her hand, and the two of them reached an agreement. They set off and headed towards the residence of that medicinal pill. However, when it was nighttime, they still decided to stop and rest for a while to recover their energy. After all, they had experienced a huge battle during the day. It was going to be 55 soon. He hoped that he could continue to make it to the top 55 red envelope list. By the 5th of May, the red envelope reign would be able to give back to the readers and promote his work. Peace is also love, definitely good is better. Chapter 1180. A smug expression spread across Mengwei's face, and she said, I've cultivated a special cultivation technique that allows me to release a sliver of my divine sense within a certain range. Ordinary restrictions can't block it. Ling Han couldn't help but glance at her. This cultivation technique was quite good. It allowed him to explore unknown areas without risking his own life. What's the situation now? He asked. Mengwei nodded. She closed her eyes, and it was as if she had become a stone statue. Ling Han's sharp senses detected that something had crawled out from Mengwei's body. It was invisible and formless, so he naturally couldn't see or touch it. Only divine sense could sense its existence, but it had to be very close. If it was any further, he couldn't sense it. After a long while, Mengwei suddenly opened her eyes and said as expected, It's still the same group of demonic beasts. I slashed the eye of one of them, and I still remember it clearly. What cultivation level are they at? Ling Han asked. Most of them are at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and only a few are at the high extreme, Mengwei said. Then she patted Ling Han's shoulder and said, In the past we could only run, but now that you're here, go and take care of all of them. Are you ordering me around like a lackey? Ling Han shook his head. If they were only at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, he naturally wouldn't be afraid. If there were sun-moon tier great beasts, then he could only run. However, it was still worth the risk for the treasure left behind by an alchemist. Pung! With a kick, he sent the courtyard door flying and directly barged in. This was a garden, but the garden was already abandoned. There were 3 demonic beasts lying on the ground resting. They looked like tigers, but the difference was that there was a single horn on their foreheads, and they were all silver in color. Hearing the commotion, the 3 demonic beasts all crawled up. Someone's here again. Haha, we can have a feast. Cultivators are very nourishing. If I eat a human, perhaps I can advance. How is that possible? Unless you can eat a human at the sun-moon tier. However, it's really not bad to have a sumptuous meal. It's been a long time since I've eaten human flesh. How nostalgic. The 3 demonic beasts spoke one after another. Once they reached the god realm, they would naturally be able to speak. It would not be a problem for them to transform into human form. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, It's been a long time since I've eaten beast meat. I don't mind trying it. What an arrogant human. Kill him. The 3 demonic beasts roared and charged towards Ling Han. These were 3 demonic beasts at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. Their battle prowess was quite astonishing, because demonic beasts had an innate advantage over cultivators. Thus, it was extremely normal for their battle prowess to surpass 1 star. Xiao xiao xiao, 3 demonic beasts pounced over, their shadows seeming to blot out the sky and cover the earth. Ling Han shook his head and casually raised a finger. Pa pa pa. 3 flashes of sword light swept over, and the 3 demonic beasts were sliced in half. They were completely dead. Because they had seen Ling Han insta-kill 24 thieves at the consummate level, Meng Wei and the others were already mentally prepared. However, seeing 3 powerful demonic beasts sliced in half with a single finger was still a huge shock to them. So it turned out that Mountain River tier cultivators could be this powerful. As expected of a disciple of the Majestic Heaven sect, Ling Han walked over and casually stored the corpses of the 3 demonic beasts into the Black Tower. The bodies of high-level demonic beasts were treasures, and their spiritual flesh was extremely nourishing. It was extremely useful for body cultivators. More demonic beasts scuttled out from the manor. When they discovered that there were only a few pools of blood on the ground, and that their 3 companions were nowhere to be seen, they all flew into a rage. A horned tiger stepped forward and said, "Human, where are our companions? They wanted to eat me, but I killed them," Ling Han said with a smile. This instantly infuriated the demonic beasts, and they all wanted to pounce over and bite Ling Han to death. However, the horned tiger released a roar and suppressed the other demonic beasts. Then it said, "Human, we have no enmity with you. So why did you come to our territory and kill our own kind?" Ling Han smiled and said, "Your question makes me feel slightly embarrassed. However, since you are demonic beasts, why did you occupy the territory of humans? So, even if someone has to ask questions, I should be the one asking them. Why did you come here?" The horned tiger couldn't help but feel stifled. He had only asked this question to give Ling Han some psychological pressure. If some humans didn't have a strong enough mental fortitude, they would shrink back after being questioned by these few sentences. Moreover, he indeed didn't want to become enemies with these humans. 3 of his companions had actually been killed so quickly, so it was clear that their strength was a bit too strong. It would be best if they didn't battle. At their level, there wasn't much difference between demonic beasts and humans. They were all cultivators of the Tao of heaven and earth. "Big brother, why are you still wasting words with him? We have so many tigers, so why should we be afraid of a few humans?" A horned tiger said in disdain. They had also eaten many humans during the opening of ancient sites in the past. In their minds, human cultivators were synonymous with weakness, so there was naturally no need for them to be afraid. The leader of the horned tigers was clearly hesitant. On one hand, he didn't dare to underestimate Ling Han and the others, and on the other hand, he was used to thinking that humans couldn't be very strong. He didn't know what to choose at this moment. Die. However, Meng Wei drew her saber and charged forward. "Leader." Her subordinates hurriedly charged after her. Otherwise, if she was surrounded by the tigers, she would be quickly torn to pieces even if she was at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. "Haha, it's you." A horned tiger chuckled coldly. There was a wound at the corner of his eye, and it had been inflicted by Meng Wei 100 years ago. He had been secretly hating her for so many years, and he hadn't thought that he would have a chance to take revenge. He was the first to pounce. Upon seeing this, the tigers also roared and charged forward. Upon seeing this, the leader of the horned tigers could only let out a roar and charge forward. "Kill! Kill!" Hu Feiyun hid behind Shui Yinyu. She liked bustling scenes, yet she was afraid of death. Thus, if there was danger, it was naturally up to them to deal with it. She would just watch from the sidelines. Ling Han shook his head. He had no intention of forcing her to fight, either. For example, the Rain Emperor and the others needed to improve themselves through battle. However, Hu Feiyun's situation was special. She only needed to increase her cultivation level, and Empress Luanxing's will would slowly awaken and guide her as she climbed to the peak of martial art. Thus, she didn't need to fight in battle. After all, she had already gone through this process. Meanwhile, Shui Yinyu was very interested, and she charged forward with her sword. She didn't want to be a pretty face by Ling Han's side. She wanted to show her light and warmth. Of course, she wasn't stupid. She found the weakest tiger in the pack, which was at the same cultivation level as her. Instantly, an intense battle broke out. The Azura Demon Emperor was responsible for protecting them. Although his battle prowess was only at the low extreme level of the Sun-Moon tier, in this mystery realm, his battle prowess was like that of a saint. Thus Ling Han was very assured. However, he didn't dare to use this kind of power carelessly. It was possible that he would be targeted by the restrictions here. However, both Ling Han and the Azura Demon Emperor didn't move, so everyone immediately fell into a dangerous situation. It was almost 55, and they hoped that they could continue to make a name for themselves on the 55 Red Packet rankings. By the 5th of May, the reign of Red Packets would be able to reward readers and promote their works. Being a piece of cake was also love. It was definitely more refreshing to read on the phone. Chapter 1181. The leader of the Horned Tigers was a little confused. He was originally very confident in the strength of these humans, and thus suppressed his ferocity, wanting to persuade Ling Han and the others to retreat rather than start a battle. However, in the current situation, these humans were completely here to die. Only 2 people didn't attack, but one of them was clearly at the Mountain River tier, and no matter how strong he was still at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. 10 tigers should be able to deal with him, right? The other one was a stupid puppet, so there was even less of a need to worry about him. He was too careful. He also felt that way. In these tens of thousands of years, who knew how many humans they had killed and eaten? At most they would encounter some small trouble. Humans were very weak. With this thought, he relaxed, and released a long tiger roar, saying, "Brothers, charge!" The remaining dozens of demonic tigers instantly roared and charged into the battle. With their participation, Meng Wei and the others were naturally in even more danger. "Handsome, hurry up and help!" Meng Wei called out. "Brat, you seem to be the leader of this group." The leader of the Horned Tigers stared at Ling Han, and said, "Just as well, I'm also the leader. Let's have a great battle, king against king." "Sure," Ling Han said with a smile. He clenched his right fist and then punched out. Boom! Origin power burst forth and regulations surged, transforming into a pillar of light. Pong! A wall instantly shattered, but the power didn't dissipate. Pong, 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 pong! A total of 11 walls were destroyed. It wasn't that the power of this attack had disappeared, but that it had already blasted out of the manor, and there were no more walls to destroy. The beam of light quickly turned into a small dot. Wherever the beam of light passed, a deep pit was left on the ground, showing how terrifying the power of this attack was. The environment of the immortal realm was very stable, and it was very difficult for Mountain River tier cultivators to cause great damage. However, now that Ling Han had advanced to the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier, his power had soared to 8 stars, and his destructive power had also become stronger. The face of the leader of the Horned Tigers twitched, and cold sweat dripped down his face. "I missed," Ling Han murmured. Then he smiled. "What did you say just now? You want to challenge me king to king? Duel my ass." The leader of the Horned Tigers was on the verge of tears. You can't play with tigers like this. In the face of such a terrifying attack, not to mention him defending with all his strength, even if the Tiger brothers attacked together, they would probably all be killed in an instant. He finally understood that these humans were indeed very ordinary, except for this man. "Stop fighting, stop fighting!" he shouted. "It's too late. I really want to eat tiger meat to nourish myself." Ling Han attacked, and with a flick of his finger, he dealt with the Horned Tiger. He had wanted to play for a while longer, but when he thought about the pill recipes and elixirs here, he decided to get down to business first. These tigers killed and ate people, so why should he be merciful? Sword chi sword, and wherever Ling Han passed by, all the Horned Tigers would be killed. Their corpses were all stored into the Black Tower. These were his spoils of war, so he naturally didn't need to share them with Meng Wei and the others. Meng Wei and the others all said, "How relaxing. It's so good to ride on someone powerful." They had thought that this would be a fierce battle, but they didn't think that it would be resolved so easily. With Meng Wei in the lead, they arrived at the depths of the manor. There was a secret room here, but it was protected by restrictions. 100 years ago, when we discovered this place, the restrictions were much more complete, Meng Wei said. 100 years ago, she had discovered this place using a secret technique, and discovered that there were many alchemical pills hidden here. Those demonic tigers probably occupied this place because they wanted to open it, Ling Han speculated. After reaching the immortal level, demonic beasts weren't much different from humans in terms of martial art. Thus, alchemical pills refined by humans were also effective on demonic beasts. However, this restriction is still quite powerful, he observed. Even after such a long time, this restriction was still extremely powerful. Otherwise, with so many demonic tigers teaming up, they would have been able to break it. Handsome, can you break it? Mengwei asked. I'll give it a try. Ling Han didn't take on everything. He first walked around this place, roughly understanding this restriction. Soon he came to a conclusion. With his deduction ability, he would need around 10 years to break this restriction. Under normal circumstances, this was an impossible task. After half a year, this mystery realm would become incredibly dangerous, and all outsiders would be slaughtered. How could there be time for him? However, Ling Han had the reincarnation tree. He found an excuse, saying that he had to focus on studying this restriction, and that he couldn't be disturbed. He chased Mengwei and the others out, and then told the Azura Demon Emperor to guard this secret room. Meanwhile, he entered the Black Tower, and comprehended under the reincarnation tree. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 11 days later, Ling Han smiled confidently. He had used an extra day because entering and exiting the Black Tower, and continuously observing this restriction would take up extra time. He called everyone over. Handsome, you can break it just like that? Mengwei was extremely surprised. It had only been 11 days. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I can't help it. I'm a prodigy, everyone laughed, but Ling Han wasn't exaggerating. Breaking such a complicated restriction in 11 days was like a monster. Of course, the prerequisite was that he could succeed. Ling Han didn't waste his breath and continued to move. At one moment he would launch a few palm strikes here and there, and at the next moment he would launch a palm strike there. It felt as if he was putting on a show, and Hu Feiyun couldn't help but yawn. Her patience had always been very poor. However, after an hour, everyone felt their bodies become lighter for some reason, but they didn't feel any obvious changes. The restriction has been broken. Ling Han smiled and took the lead. Sure enough, he walked all the way to the door, and didn't suffer any attacks at all. He pushed the large stone in the secret room. This was a stone door, and under his push, the stone door groaned and slowly opened. Everyone's eyes widened, and they were filled with anticipation. The door opened and they saw that it was pitch black inside. However, gods naturally didn't need light to see clearly. There were rows of pill cabinets in this secret room, and the cabinets were filled with pill bottles. We're rich. We're rich. Mengwei and the others shouted excitedly. Ling Han walked in first, and the others followed behind him. So many high-ranked divine pills. This is a bone polishing pill. Can increase the strength of bones. 1,000 crane pill. It can allow one to escape from the laws of heaven and earth and fly for a period of time. Frost pill. It can make one immune to ice secret techniques for a short period of time. Everyone looked at the labels on the pill bottles, and they were all overjoyed. However, when Mengwei pulled out the cork of a pill bottle, she screamed in pain. Boss, what's wrong? Captain, you weren't satisfied with your desires a few days ago. Can't you take it anymore? These people teased her. The pill, it's already turned to dust. Mengwei's face fell. It was going to be 55 soon, and she hoped that she could continue to make it to the 55 red envelope rankings. On the 5th of May, she would be able to give red envelopes to her readers and promote her works. Peace is also love, definitely good is better. Chapter 1182. What? Everyone rushed up and sure enough, there were no pills left in that pill bottle, only ashes at the bottom of the bottle. No way, no way. Where are the other pills? They all took down the bottles on the pill cabinet, and opened them one by one to check, but without exception because too much time had passed, not a single bottle of pills could be preserved. This one bottle was a disappointment, and it broke their hearts. Every single bottle here was at least level 5, and one pill could be sold for a sky-high price. With so many pills added together, it was an indescribably huge fortune. But the dream of becoming rich didn't last long before they were slapped out of their dreams. All ruined. Wasn't this maddening? Ling Han didn't find it strange. Time was the greatest enemy of all existence, and so what if it was a divine pill? It would still decay. Of course, the higher the level of the pill, the less likely it was to deteriorate. If it was above level 10, then it might even become sentient, develop intelligence, and activate life. This was the so-called pill spirit, a precious treasure in the world, because once a divine pill activated life, not only would its own medicinal effects not be lost, but it could also absorb the essence of heaven and earth, making the medicinal effects stronger. However, to form a pill spirit, the first requirement was that the level of the pill surpassed level 10, and added with an incredibly long time it might not succeed. Who would be willing to leave a divine pill aside after refining it? Judging from the alchemical pills he concocted, this alchemist should be below level 9. Thus, the alchemical pills he concocted are all between level 5 and level 8, Ling Han said to himself. However, to me, the pill recipes of this level are the best. Right now, I can barely refine level 5 pills, but I will soon advance to the Sun Moon tier, so it won't be difficult to refine level 8 divine pills. Let's search, there should be pill recipes. After searching for a while, he indeed found a bookcase full of pill recipes. One pill recipe needed the thickness of a book to record, and too much time had passed, so these books had become incredibly fragile, and would turn into dust with a touch. Thus, Ling Han first stored this bookcase into the Black Tower. Then, it would be impossible for them to disappear even if they wanted to. He immediately made 2 copies, then took out the original copy and said, Leader Meng, according to our previous agreement, both sides can make a copy of all the pill formulas. I've already made a copy, and the original version is also here. You can pick one. When did you copy this? Meng Wei was still rummaging through the elixirs. She was unwilling to give up and wanted to see if there were any elixirs that had survived. He choose. Ling Han wouldn't say that he had taken the time to enter into the Black Tower, and instantly finished making a copy. Moreover, it was 2 copies. Meng Wei carefully compared the 2 copies, and after discovering that there was not a single word that was out of place, she nodded and said, It's so easy to cooperate with a handsome guy. Hey. Our cooperation is about to come to an end, so why don't we have a breakup party? I've been holding it in for so many days and it's so itchy. Fuck off. Ling Han put away 1 copy and left the original version for her. In any case, it would shatter at the slightest touch. Could it be that my charm has decreased? Meng Wei wore a strange expression. Impossible. My breasts aren't small, my waist isn't thick, and my butt is still perky. Why can't I get this handsome guy? Could it be that he doesn't like women? Gasp. I can hear you, Ling Han said in annoyance. Leader. Someone suddenly exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. What? The sky hasn't collapsed. Even if it did, isn't there still this handsome guy to support it? Meng Wei said. There's a bottle of unspoiled alchemical pills. Someone shouted. What? Meng Wei also jumped up and rushed over. Even Ling Han was a little curious, and he followed behind her. Most of the alchemical pills here had turned to dust, but there was one bottle that was unspoiled. Even those who didn't understand alchemy could guess that this bottle of alchemical pills had to be extraordinary, which was why they had survived for so long. Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. Meng Wei took the bottle and read the label on it. What alchemical pill is this? Everyone shook their heads. They had never heard of it before. This is a miraculous pill for Sun Moon tier cultivators. It can help Sun Moon tier cultivators advance by a sub-minor level, saving them tens of thousands of years of time, a voice suddenly said. Who? Everyone immediately turned around and walked toward the door. I am Ji Zhengping. There was a person standing at the door. However, because it was extremely dark here, they could only see a pitch-black silhouette behind him. Even so, they could still tell that this person was very tall and slender. The person paused for a moment, and then said, Hand over the divine pill, and I'll spare your lives. Or else? Meng Wei asked. Or else? Ji Zhengping smiled. He opened his right hand, and an egg-sized object appeared in his palm. This is a viper poison explosion pill. Once it's thrown, it will immediately explode. Then it will release a terrifying poison. Believe me, anyone below the Sun Moon tier, regardless of whether they're human or demonic beast, will be poisoned to death in half a breath's time if they inhale even a sliver of this poison. Meng Wei and the others were all astonished. He wasn't lying. The viper poison explosion pill was indeed that terrifying. However, whether the object in his hand was really the viper poison explosion pill or not was still a question mark. I'll give you 15 minutes to consider. If you don't hand over the divine pill after that, I'll have no choice but to throw this viper poison explosion pill in. Ji Zhongping chuckled and said, I hate killing people the most, so don't force me. No one knew whether he was speaking the truth or not. However, if he was speaking the truth, that would be far too terrifying. Meng Wei and the others didn't dare to act rashly. They were all people who lived on the edge of a knife, but it was precisely because of this that they cherished their lives. As long as they were alive, everything was possible. However, if they were dead, then there would be nothing left. Ling Han frowned. He too could not determine whether Ji Zhongping was bluffing, or if he really had a powerful weapon in his hands. He was unafraid, but what if he dragged Meng Wei and the others into this? Since that was the case, he silently hid in the darkness, and then unleashed the annihilating dragon star arrow. He didn't even need to use the ultimate technique. With his current strength, he could insta-kill a consummate level being with a normal arrow. Ji Zhongping smiled, and he was very pleased with himself. He had taken control of the situation by himself, and this made him feel very good about himself. However, a strong sense of danger suddenly welled up in his heart, causing his heart to contract violently, and all the pores on his body to close up. Danger! He couldn't care about anything else at this moment, and he hurriedly retreated. Xiu! A streak of cold light flashed past at an astonishing speed, and it pierced through his left shoulder. The powerful force sent him flying. It was almost 55, and he hoped that he could continue to make a name for himself on the 55 red envelope rankings. By the 5th of May, he would be able to receive a rain of red envelopes to reward his readers and promote his works. A piece of cake was also love, and it was definitely better to enjoy it. Chapter 1184. Sha Yuan's talent in martial art was indeed inferior to Zhao Luan's, but being able to be taken in as a key disciple, his strength was indeed considerably strong. Hong, the large hand, descended, covering the sky and covering the sun. There was a cold smirk at the corners of his lips. What was this prodigy of the Scarlet Heaven Academy worth in front of him? No matter how freakish and genius you were, cultivation level determined everything. Die. He would take advantage of the instant when Ling Han's soul dissipated to extract the latter's memories and obtain as much as he could. Ling Han shook his head. This kind of attack would have no effect in front of him now. He took a deep breath and then blew into the sky. Pa! That large hand of origin power immediately crumbled, turning into innumerable fragments that floated in all directions. Holy shit! Sha Yuan and the others all gaped in shock, completely unable to believe what they had just witnessed. This was too exaggerated, wasn't it? Blowing a breath was so powerful? This was not boasting. Could it be that this guy was in the Sun Moon tier? But Sun Moon tier cultivators couldn't enter this place. Even if some forces nurtured some Sun Moon tier cultivators and had them destroy their own cultivation level, then consume forbidden alchemical pills to forcibly increase their power and return to the Sun Moon tier. Ling Han was so young, so could he possibly destroy his own cultivation level? No, impossible. Sha Yuan should be the one who understood Ling Han the most out of all of them. His face was filled with disbelief, and he pointed at Ling Han and exclaimed, "How could you possibly possess such battle prowess? It's absolutely impossible." Sha Yuan, there are many things that are impossible in your eyes, but they will all come true. For example, I will kill you, Ling Han said darkly. If he had said this earlier, Sha Yuan would definitely not have believed him, but Ling Han had dispersed his large hand of origin power with a single breath, and the gap between their strength could be said to be obvious. Sha Yuan humphed and said, "Fine, consider yourself lucky this time. You can leave." Ling Han was astonished, practically unable to believe his own ears. This guy still thought that he had the upper hand? He actually said that he could leave, as if he had done him a great favor. Ling Han understood. This guy was too full of himself. He still thought that this was Point Star City, and that he was the son of Great General Sha, so he could do as he pleased just because he was in the heavenly body tier. What? You still haven't scrammed? Sha Yuan said coldly, clearly very impatient. He had already done him a great favor, so why wasn't this guy thanking him and scram? Ling Han shook his head and said, Sha Yuan, I used to think that you were arrogant, overbearing and a profligate disciple. But only now do I realize how wrong I was. Haha, you finally discovered that this young master isn't ordinary, right? Sha Yuan thought to himself as the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. You're a fucking idiot, Ling Han said again. I wiped Sha Yuan's smiling face immediately became incomparably awkward. He hadn't expected that there would be a sudden turn of events and that Ling Han would actually stab him in the back. He said coldly, What exactly do you want? Nothing much. I just want to borrow your head, Ling Han said calmly. You're courting death. Sha Yuan was furious. Who was the son of an elite of the heavenly body tier? Someone actually wanted to borrow his head? Furthermore, this person was a country bumpkin from a small world. Ling Han shook his head and said, I still can't talk too much nonsense with you. Otherwise, my intelligence will be dragged down by you. Alright, I've let you say so much before you die. It's time for you to be on your way. You dare to kill me? Sha Yuan was filled with shock. He felt that this was a colossal joke that was practically unacceptable. Who was he? How high was his status? Ling Han actually wanted to kill him? Ling Han didn't answer. Instead, he stretched out his right hand, and a powerful force began to gather. His killing intent was also boiling. Now it was Sha Yuan and in the future it would be Zhao Luan. All the debts that were owed to him, he would collect them one by one. He flicked his finger and xiao, a flash of sword light streaked past, slashing towards Sha Yuan. Pooh! Blood splattered, but Sha Yuan wasn't sliced into two. There was a flash of golden light on his body, and it was as if he had become a golden armored god of war. And Ling Han's eyes widened, and he saw that Sha Yuan's body was actually wrapped in a golden law decree. It was precisely that law decree that had activated its might in a timely manner, blocking Ling Han's sure-kill attack. Evidently, this was the law decree that Great General Sha had bestowed upon his son. You, how dare you? Sha Yuan was unable to restrain his anger, and even his voice was trembling. If this law decree had activated its might, it could only mean one thing. He had encountered a situation where he would definitely die, and that was why the law decree had activated on its own. He had almost died. You deserved to die. Sha Yuan roared loudly. This law decree could only be activated passively, but now that it had been activated, how could he possibly miss such an opportunity? He was just about to use this opportunity to kill Ling Han. He attacked, and as his fist blasted out, the law decree increased his battle prowess. It transformed into a golden bull that charged towards Ling Han. AI, why were these rich second generations so difficult to kill? Ah! Just as Ling Han was grumbling internally, Sha Yuan gave a muffled grunt, and an expression of pain appeared on his face. The golden light on his body also trembled, and the law decree flickered between brightness and darkness as if it was about to be destroyed. That bull also dissipated on its own. Ling Han was startled at first. He hadn't even attacked, so why did Sha Yuan look like he was in agony as if his ass had been pierced? However, he immediately understood. There were restrictions here, and as long as one's power reached the Sun Moon tier, they would be targeted. Previously, the law decree had activated its might, and blocked one of his finger swords. Though its might was extraordinary, it had not reached the level of the Sun Moon tier. But now Sha Yuan had taken the initiative to attack and activated the law decree. His power had reached the level of the Sun Moon tier, so it was natural that he would be targeted by the restrictions here. He had not injured the enemy, but had injured himself first. Yet Sha Yuan himself did not understand. He still thought that Ling Han had also used some kind of secret technique to target him. Not only had he not suppressed the law decree's might, he had instead drawn out the law decree's power a step further. Once the law decree was activated, its power would slowly dissipate. Even if he did not use it, he could not possibly recover it. Thus, he naturally wanted to take advantage of this rare opportunity to kill Ling Han. Ah! But with such a draw of power, he screamed even louder. The law decree continued to tremble as if it was about to be torn apart. Pa! This law decree actually exploded into pieces, turning into fragments that filled the sky. Sha Yuan also suffered a backlash and spat out a mouthful of blood. Thankfully, he had not been sliced apart as well. His face was filled with confusion. What was going on? Even when the law decree was activated, this was the result. He pointed at Ling Han and said in a trembling voice, What demonic technique did you use? How ignorant. Ling Han shook his head. With a flick of his finger, sword light streaked past, slicing towards Sha Yuan. Stop! Ji Zhongping and the others all pounced out, helping Sha Yuan neutralize this attack. But though Ling Han had done it casually, his present power had reached 8 stars above the peak stage of the mountain river tier. How powerful was this? Pung 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 pung. All 4 of them were sent flying by this finger sword, but Sha Yuan luckily escaped death because of this. If you want to help him, I'll kill all of you, Ling Han said indifferently. Who else wants to stop me? It was going to be 55 soon. He hoped that he could continue to make it to the top 55 red envelope list. By the 5th of May, the red envelope reign would be able to give back to the readers and promote his work. Peace is also love, definitely good is better. Chapter 1185. You're that mysterious person. The 4 people from the Majestic Heaven sect all pointed at Ling Han. Only now did they realize that this person couldn't possibly be the country bumpkin that Sha Yuan spoke of, but was the mysterious elite that had wounded Ji Zhongping with an arrow. How was this possible? When did such a powerful king tier appear among the younger generation? Just that strike alone was definitely on par with He Tao Wuxia and the other king tiers. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and he said, Leave behind your spatial spirit tool and scram. These people wanted to rob him, so there was naturally no reason for him to let them off. That would be letting them off too easily. Don't go too far. Ji Zhongping shouted angrily. However, blood was still spurting from his shoulder, greatly affecting his image, and he had no might to speak of. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, The path you guys walked before was too smooth, and you actually said such childish words. Humph, in front of me, who do you think you are? If you don't obediently leave behind your spatial spirit tools, then I'll kill you. Ji Zhongping felt extremely humiliated, but couldn't help but remember that he had also used the viper poison explosion pill to threaten them before, saying that he would kill them if they didn't hand over the berserk blood spirit pill. Now it was just an eye for an eye. Fairness. In this world, whoever was stronger would be the representative of fairness. You win. Ji Zhongping and the others all took out their spatial rings and threw them on the ground, appearing extremely angry. They could all be called prodigies, and it had always been them who did whatever they wanted. When had they ever suffered such humiliation? Sha Yuan also threw out a spatial ring, and was about to leave with Ji Zhongping and the others. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh and said, Young Master Sha, has your head been kicked by a donkey? Did I say you could leave? Ling Han, if you really want to kill me, aren't you afraid that my father will fly into a rage and come here to take your dog life? Sha Yuan said harshly. The decree was destroyed, and he finally felt true fear. When he said these words, he appeared fierce but was actually cowardly. Ling Han shook his head and said, I'm sure Great General Sha wouldn't mind having one less son like you who deceives his father. Sir, you've already taken the money. There's no need to be so overbearing, advised the blue-robed youth. The 5 of them were together, and they naturally didn't want their companions to be slaughtered. I'll kill your entire family, and then I'll tell you that since he's already dead, there's no need to be so overbearing. Are you happy or not? Ling Han glared at him, then said impatiently, in 3 breaths, all of you scram. Otherwise, you can accompany him in death. He was truly enraged. His terrifying aura transformed into a vast ocean, incomparably frightening. Ji Zhongping and the others were all astonished. This was definitely a king tier. How can a king allow others to challenge his authority? Their faces were all pale, and they all turned around to leave. They did not dare to say another word, lest they were killed by Ling Han as well. Since Ling Han had already decided to kill a key disciple of the Majestic Heaven sect, and the son of a heavenly body tier elite at that, killing a few more key disciples and descendants of the heavenly body tier would not be a big deal. Don't go. Save me. Save me. Sha Yuan was dumbfounded. This was the first time he had felt death so close to him, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Ji Zhongping and the others ignored him and fled very quickly. Sha Yuan blankly turned around and looked at Ling Han for a while. Then he suddenly said, "Don't kill me. I can be your friend. I'm the son of an elite of the heavenly body tier, so you definitely won't lose out if you have me as a friend." Ling Han broke into a smile and said, "I really did not want to say this to scare you. However, you are so full of yourself, so if I don't deal a blow to your ego, I would really feel bad. Speaking of friends, I have a saint as a friend. Furthermore, the Empress will also be my wife in future. This friendship of yours, I really can't accept it." Sha Yuan was dumbfounded. "You must you be lying to me. A saint? How could it be that only Genesis tiers could be called saints? If you could befriend a saint, then wouldn't you be able to do as you please in this world? And you even said you wanted to marry the Empress. Pay, how high and mighty was the Empress? Even his old man could only drool in secret, so how could Ling Han have a chance? I am about to die, so there is no need for me to lie to you. However, there is also no need for me to make you believe me." Ling Han smiled and said, "Are you ready to die?" Sha Yuan felt a chill run through his body, and his legs involuntarily turned to jelly. He knelt down with a paw and cried, "Don't kill me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." "That's right, no one wants to die." Ling Han raised a hand and said, "But because of your own desires, you coveted the fateful opportunities that I possessed, and sent people to hunt me down. If it were not for the fact that I have a few tricks up my sleeve, I'm afraid that grass would have already grown over my grave." He shot out a punch and a terrifying power descended. Sha Yuan was instantly blasted apart. His body and spirit were both destroyed, and he turned into a mist of blood that filled the air. Not even a complete corpse was left behind. "Hey, handsome guy, you killed a disciple of the majestic heaven sect. So will you kill us as well?" Meng Wei swallowed with difficulty. The others hurriedly cast looks at their captain, meaning to say, "Why are you asking? Why don't you pretend to be confused and sneak away? Aren't you reminding us by asking now?" Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "It's fine. In any case, we have already let 4 of them escape, so it doesn't matter if we have a few more alive. You guys won't go and tell on me, right?" Meng Wei and the others hurriedly shook their heads. "That's good." Ling Han picked up the spatial rings that Ji Zhongping and the others had left behind, and took out the items inside. Then he stored them in the Black Tower. If he kept them in the spatial ring, they would be able to link him to the murderer if they were found in the future. However, if he stored them in the Black Tower, who would be able to find them? "Handsome guy, this bottle of Berserk Blood Spirit pills belongs to you." Meng Wei handed over the bottle of alchemical pills that she had obtained previously. Ling Han smiled and said, "Didn't we agree to split it evenly? You saved us again, and we have obtained so many pill recipes. We have already profited greatly. As humans, we cannot be too greedy." Meng Wei shook her head. "All right." Ling Han accepted the alchemical pill. In the process of obtaining the treasures here, he was the one who had contributed the most. Taking one more bottle was considered one bottle, but in truth it was not an exaggeration to say that there was only one alchemical pill inside. "In that case, we'll be taking our leave now, handsome." Meng Wei cupped her hands in greeting. After Ling Han nodded, she added, "I really don't want to have a breakup party. Get lost." After watching Meng Wei and the others leave, Ling Han and the others also set off. However, Ling Han's attention was focused on the pill recipe he had just obtained. He was definitely unable to concoct alchemical pills above level 5, as the level of his divine sense was a little too low. However, if it was level 5, he should just barely be able to concoct it. After all, his divine sense had been continuously tempered by the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, and was far stronger than an ordinary mountain river tier cultivator's. Moreover, he had also stepped into the pinnacle level. He searched for a while and discovered that the Berserk Blood Spirit pill was among these pill recipes. Chapter 1186. The Berserk Blood Spirit pill could raise one's cultivation level by a subminor level at the Sun Moon tier. Moreover, there was no cultivation level restriction. In other words, a cultivator at the middle stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier would be able to reach the late stage of the low extreme by consuming one, and a cultivator at the early stage of the consummate level could similarly reach the middle stage of the consummate level by consuming one. This effect was too shocking. However, when Ling Han looked at the ingredients listed in the prescription, he grimaced. The ingredients required to concoct such a heaven-defying pill were naturally extremely astonishing. Among them, the most important of the main ingredients was called the Red Rain Divine King Fruit. Though it was only a level 8 godly medicine, it was incredibly rare. Furthermore, the age requirement for it to be able to be used as medicine was as high as 1 million years. Even if it was placed in the Black Tower and nurtured from scratch, it would still take as long as 1,000 years. To immortals, 1,000 years was indeed not a long time. Mountain River tier cultivators might not even be able to take a single step forward, but Ling Han's advancement was too fast, so 1,000 years was a little hard for him to accept. However, if he encountered the Red Rain Divine King Fruit, he still had to get it. Even if it wasn't for himself, he could also prepare it for his brothers, his friends, his beautiful wives, his parents, and his children. In short, the more of such precious medicine, the better, and he would never turn his back on it. Of course, the effects were obvious even when consumed by cultivators at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. The Berserk Blood Spirit pill was naturally a level 8 divine pill, and there was a certain degree of danger if consumed by cultivators at the low extreme, medium extreme, or high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. There was a possibility that their bodies would explode. Thus, if these people were to consume the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, they would need the protection of their elders, who would be able to suppress the pill's effects with great strength. Otherwise, if they were to die from consuming the pill, it would be too unjust. Ling Han set the Berserk Blood Spirit pill aside. Firstly, his divine soul was not strong enough. Secondly, he did not have the ingredients to refine it. The first pill he prepared was the Thousand Crane pill. This could allow cultivators below the heavenly body tier to also be able to fly, but only during the duration of the effects of the alchemical pill. Moreover, their speed could be increased explosively, so it was very practical. At a critical moment, it could be used to save lives. Life-saving pills were definitely the most valuable. The three of them hurried along during the day and stopped to rest at night. Traveling in such a dangerous place, it was only natural that they would try their best to maintain their peak condition. At night, Ling Han would come to the reincarnation tree to comprehend the pill recipe. He was the alchemy emperor, so he was naturally a maniac in this aspect. Once he started researching, he wouldn't be able to stop. For a good few days he sat alone under the reincarnation tree, and Shui Yinyu was not used to this. Usually Ling Han would always tease her, causing her to blush and feel incredibly embarrassed. But now he actually treated her as air for several days in a row. He didn't even give her a flirtatious look. She was infuriated. She either behaved like a hooligan, or she behaved like a proper gentleman. She was really extreme. After traveling for a few more days, a mountain appeared in front of them. This mountain could only be counted as half a mountain. Because it was almost cut off at the waist, the remaining half of the mountain seemed a little abrupt. There were silhouettes flashing on the mountain, and it wasn't just one or two but many. Ling Han and the other two walked to the foot of the mountain, and only then did they know that this was a medicinal mountain, and there were many divine medicines here. Low-level divine medicines could be plucked at will, but high-level divine medicines were protected by restrictions, and it was very difficult to remove them. Some were completely impossible to remove, and would require at least the action of a heavenly body tier elite. Ling Han couldn't help but be delighted. Perhaps there was a ripe Red Rain Divine King Fruit here? Then he only had to advance into the Sun-Moon tier, and he would be able to concoct the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, and his strength would soar. Moreover, even if it wasn't for the Red Rain Divine King Fruit, as long as it was a divine medicine, wasn't it worth plucking? The three of them had clearly come too late. The low-level divine medicines that weren't protected by restrictions had all been plucked away. However, Ling Han wasn't very interested in these divine medicines either. The Black Tower had already nurtured a large number of divine medicines, though their grade was relatively low. They walked searching and very soon discovered a few divine medicines that were protected by restrictions. They were as high as level 7, but they hadn't matured yet. According to Ling Han's speculation, there should be a mother medicine that had matured long ago, But because it hadn't been plucked away, the seed had fallen where it was, and thus a few stalks had grown. That was because this area was designed for a single divine medicine to grow in the first place, and now there were a few stalks growing. Though it didn't seem crowded, there was clearly not enough nutrients, causing these divine medicines to appear very dispirited. "I've made you suffer, but I'll save you," Ling Han couldn't help but say with a smile. "I've never seen you so shameless. You obviously want to use me to concoct alchemical pills, and you still act like you're a savior." Hu Feiyun made a face at him. "Then don't eat the alchemical pills I concoct," Ling Han said with a smile. "I was just saying don't be so petty," Hu Feiyun said with a pout. Ling Han circled around the divine medicines a few times, and first memorized the restrictions. Then, he started to make predictions under the reincarnation tree. After a while, he entered the Black Tower, and began to dispel the restrictions. This took much more time than he had imagined. After 17 days, Ling Han finally dispelled the restrictions, and stored these level 7 divine medicines into the Black Tower. "At this rate, even if I spend all of half a year here, I won't be able to take away many divine medicines." Ling Han shook his head. "Let's search first and see if there are any Red Rain Divine King fruits. This is the most valuable divine medicine to me at this stage." Shui Yanyu and Hu Feiyun naturally wouldn't have any objections. Moreover, they could also enjoy the divine pills he concocted, so there was even less reason for them to object. Ling Han gave up on the idea of capturing them all in one go, and began to search for the Red Rain Divine King fruits. If he could find them, he would do his best to harvest them, and if he couldn't, he would come back to search for the most valuable divine medicines here. No matter what, he had to take a few back. However, even he had to spend over a dozen days to dispel a restriction which was equivalent to over a dozen years' time. Others naturally could only look on and sigh at their inadequacy. Thus, unless they brought along a special treasure that could dispel the restrictions, most people could only harvest the ordinary divine medicines that weren't protected by the restrictions. Because he only searched and didn't take only half a day later, Ling Han had more or less searched through this herb mountain. When he was about to finish, his eyes finally lit up, and he showed an expression of pleasant surprise. "There really are Red Rain Divine King fruits." Ling Han laughed loudly. In front of him there was a tree that was 30 meters tall. It was completely crimson, and its leaves were formed from flames burning fiercely. And between the leaves there were multiple fruits. These fruits gave off steam, and like raindrops the steam fell on the fruits. It was very mystical. Ling Han was naturally happy. Though these fruits weren't completely ripe, they were already very big. If they were planted in the Black Tower, perhaps they would be completely ripe in another 3 to 5 years' time. This was really a great gift. There were a whole 27 fruits, and according to the calculation of refining 1 berserk blood spirit pill for each fruit, that would be 27 pills. The prerequisite was that he succeeded every time, and didn't waste a single one. This was naturally impossible. Who could refine alchemical pills in one go? Ling Han rubbed his hands and began to study how to break the restriction. It was going to be 55 soon. He hoped that he could continue to make it to the top 55 red envelope list. By the 5th of May, the red envelope reign would be able to give back to the readers and promote his work. Peace is also love, definitely good is better. Chapter 1188. A beautiful romance. Even if her opponent was a ginseng, Shunju, clearly wouldn't allow the old ginseng to attack her chest. She hurriedly activated an origin power shield. Pooh! The old ginseng unleashed a beam of regulation light, which forcefully slashed apart the origin power shield. Pieces of cloth flew through the air, and Shunju's bra was instantly torn apart. However, what disappointed the old ginseng was that there wasn't a towering jade mountain under this white dress. Instead, there was a golden undergarment that tightly wrapped around her chest. Could this be the legendary golden breast? The old ginseng couldn't take his eyes off her, and even saliva was dripping out of his mouth. However, he was a spiritual medicine, and his saliva was also extremely fragrant. It could be considered a great tonic. "Brat, you actually dare." The old ginseng charged towards Ling Han, his anger soaring. "Be bastard." Shanjuer was so angry that her body trembled. She was one of the 6 great king tiers, yet she was being teased by a ginseng. How could she not be furious? Fortunately, she was wearing a treasured garment. Otherwise, she would really have to expose herself to the old ginseng. She was furious and she waved her slender hand. Terrifying divine chains intertwined and shot towards the old ginseng. She had no intention of capturing him alive. In any case, ginseng could be eaten even if it was smashed. It would only slightly affect its medicinal effects. Golden breast, why are you so fixated on your grandpa? The old ginseng dodged as he teased. This brat is also a part of the people who killed your golden breast. Why don't you beat him up as well? He was still complaining about being wronged. Die! Shinjur screamed. She was a king tier of the younger generation, and she should be calm and composed. She wouldn't be shocked even if the sky collapsed before her eyes. However, this old ginseng was far too provocative. She was enraged in just a few moves, and she wouldn't stop until she tore him into pieces. There's nothing I can do. Grandpa Ginseng is too handsome. This golden breast loves me so much that she wants to kill me so that she can be with me forever. The old ginseng sighed, looking extremely narcissistic. Grandpa Ginseng is really a sinner. Ling Han had an urge to vomit. As he teamed up with Shanjur, he said, "Lowly Ginseng, I've never seen anything more shameless than you." Of course, Grandpa Ginseng is unique. The old ginseng was smug. However, he immediately flew into a rage. You dare to insult your grandpa? This old ginseng was too despicable, taking advantage of people the moment he opened his mouth. Inescapable net. Shanjur shouted. Her regulations and origin power intertwined, forming a massive net. Ling Han also summoned his crimson ground locking net, and used it to trap the old ginseng. His front, back, left, and right were all sealed off. Yet this old ginseng burrowed into the ground. He instantly disappeared. He was originally a ginseng that grew in the soil. After attaining Tao, not only did his ability in this aspect not disappear, but it was also strengthened. His earth escape technique was shockingly strong. It was gone. Swooshy was just about to say that it had disappeared when the old ginseng suddenly charged out from the ground. This old ginseng was truly despicable. It had actually charged out from between Shanjur's legs, and was heading straight for her lower abdomen. Die! Shanjur was infuriated, and her black hair danced wildly in the wind. Divine light also intertwined around her body, transforming her into a layer of frost. Your grandpa is going to freeze to death. The old ginseng was frozen solid, and he fell to the ground. However, before Ling Han and Shanjur could capture him, he once again burrowed into the ground. Ling Han was astonished. Even though Shanjur had been tricked badly by the old ginseng, this woman was truly powerful. The might of her frost was extremely frightening. Ling Han estimated that if he was struck by her at close range, he would most likely be frozen solid as well. Even if his body wasn't damaged, Shanjur could use divine chains to bind him, or kill the people around him. A king tier was not to be underestimated. Golden milk. Remember not to wear long pants under your skirt next time. You made Grandpa Ginseng lose everything. The old ginseng appeared in the distance. However, he didn't dare to get any closer. It was clear that he had suffered. Shanjur didn't say anything. She merely stared at the old ginseng. She waved her hand, and a layer of frost immediately spread toward the old ginseng. Grandpa Ginseng won't play with you anymore. The old ginseng hurriedly burrowed into the ground and fled. He was only extremely fast. However, in terms of battle prowess, he was far inferior to Shanjur and Ling Han. If he dared to face them head-on, he would be courting death. For example, Ling Han hadn't used his flame divine patterns earlier, because he didn't want to injure this treasured ginseng. Shanjur was furious. Not only had she failed to obtain a godly medicine, but she had also been tricked badly. This was unprecedented. This despicable ginseng isn't simple. Not only is it of an extremely high level, but it has also existed for countless years before gaining intelligence. It can even use the regulations of heaven and earth. It has truly attained Tao, Ling Han said. Shanjur's pretty face was filled with rage. Who cares if it's attained Tao or not? I'm definitely going to kill it. She had almost exposed her chest, so she didn't want to stay here any longer. She nodded at Ling Han and turned to leave. How fun! Hu Feiyun's eyes lit up. If you were tricked by that despicable ginseng, you probably wouldn't be able to laugh anymore. Ling Han shook his head. This old ginseng was far too fast. Most likely, only Sun Moon tier elites would be able to defeat it. Let's go. Ling Han decisively set aside his greed for this godly medicine. Since he couldn't defeat it, what was the point of wasting time? They descended the herb mountain. Meanwhile, Ling Han was thinking about how great it would be if he could completely open this mystery realm. That would give him enough time to store all the godly medicines here into the Black Tower. However, if someone had the ability to open this mystery realm, what could he do? The mystery realm wasn't peaceful. There were many demonic beasts here, and they killed each other. They also ate humans, and they continuously attacked them. However, they were all killed by Ling Han and stored into the Black Tower as food. He had accumulated a large amount of spiritual meat, and after eating it with Shui Yanyu and Hu Feiyun every day, they could clearly feel their stamina improving. A few days later, another mountain appeared in front of them. However, Ling Han definitely didn't believe that this was a naturally formed mountain. This was because this mountain was completely like a soaring eagle, and every detail of it could be seen clearly. Could it be that this was formed from a dead demonic beast? Immortal-level demonic beasts could easily reach tens of thousands of meters in height. Thus, although this Eagle Mountain was ridiculously tall, it wasn't impossible that it had been formed from a demonic beast. Moreover, this was the place where the most intense competition in the entire mystery realm was. Thousand Source True Fluid would appear here. Every day when the sun and moon intersected, a drop of Thousand Source True Fluid would fall from the eagle's beak on the mountain, causing intense competition. However, after the ancient site opened, Thousand Source True Fluid would only appear after about 3 months. Moreover, it would only last for 10 days. After tens of thousands of years, this pattern was naturally known by everyone. Everyone guessed that when the ancient site opened, some kind of change would occur, and this change would slowly form Thousand Source True Fluid. As for the specifics, no one knew. Calculating the time, there were still a few days until the 3-month deadline. Ling Han sized up this tall mountain, and he suddenly had a strong urge to run up it. Chapter 1189. It was a simple principle. If one could occupy the position of the eagle's beak, the Thousand Source True Fluid wouldn't appear so easily. However, if it were that simple, would there still be people waiting at the foot of the mountain? They would definitely be fighting each other to occupy the most advantageous position. This Eagle Mountain was not easy to climb. Ling Han knew after trying it out. There was a frightening gale on the mountain, and even his divine body couldn't withstand it. He had just advanced, and a great many wounds had already appeared on his body. If he stayed for a while longer, he would definitely be reduced to a skeleton. If the gales became stronger the higher he climbed, he wouldn't even be able to keep his skeleton. Instead, he would be sliced into pieces, and his body and spirit would be destroyed. Is it really impossible to climb up? Because there were still a few days left, Ling Han began to try to resist the gales. However, he quickly came to a conclusion. The higher he climbed, the more destructive the gales would be. It wasn't a power attack. If the gales were too powerful, they would be blown down. However, he hadn't been blown down the mountain. He had merely been severely injured. This meant that the gales were the power of regulations. Thus, although their power was ordinary, their destructive power was incredibly terrifying, at least comparable to the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Otherwise, they couldn't have cut my skin with a single blow. Ling Han speculated. However, this was only the foot of the mountain. If it continued like this, he could use the indestructible Heaven Scroll to go against the wind. Forget it. I'll just wait here. With my current battle prowess, it shouldn't be difficult to obtain a few drops of Thousand Source True Fluid. The three of them found a remote place. This way, they could enter the Black Tower without anyone noticing. Ling Han cultivated and comprehended alchemy simultaneously. When he had time, he would also refine a few cauldrons of 7 ultimate flying flame pills. This was a good way to earn money. After a few more days, the crowd became uneasy. The reason was simple. The 3 months were almost up, and the fiercest competition was about to begin. Even heavenly body tier elites would be tempted by the Thousand Source True Fluid. If they obtained a drop and didn't use it themselves, they would sell it for an astronomical price. Oh, that's right. Say, Senior, do you have any thousand source true fluid that you can give me? Ling Han asked the notionless saint, who was wrapped around the reincarnation tree. You're a saint, so you're definitely more powerful than an eternal river tier elite, right? My main body has already refined the body, so where would the thousand source true fluid come from? Notionless saint harumphed. Besides, there's no way a saint can produce the thousand source true fluid. If the body doesn't melt, then a saint bug will appear. Sigh, what a useless piece of trash, completely useless. Ling Han sighed, causing notionless saint to howl in anger. To think that he, a mighty saint, was actually being looked down upon by Ling Han. Ling Han asked Shui Yinyu and Hu Feiyun to stand off to the side. Once the fight for the drop began, it would be incredibly terrifying and cruel. Perhaps even if the 6 king tiers managed to obtain a drop, they would have no choice but to immediately flee. Otherwise, if they were ganged up on by everyone, they would definitely suffer. One had to realize that there were many powerful forces here that had nurtured special fighters. These fighters would sever their own cultivation level, then use forbidden alchemical pills to increase their power. Their battle prowess was infinitely close to the Sun Moon tier, and they wouldn't be any weaker than those at the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier. As expected, Gao Huang's greed knows no bounds. He actually wants me to bring 3 drops of thousand source true fluid to him. I really don't know what's in his head. How could he make such a request? Ling Han shook his head. However, putting aside the fact that only 10 drops of thousand source true fluid could be produced here, even if there were 100 or 1,000 drops, and he had already taken most of them, he definitely wouldn't give a single drop to Gao Huang. Why? Someone pointed at the summit of the mountain and said, the thousand source true fluid is forming. Although this mountain was tall, everyone here was an immortal, and all of them possessed astonishing eyesight. They could clearly see that there was a drop of liquid forming near the eagle's beak. However, it wasn't large enough, so it hadn't fallen yet. Everyone instantly began to sharpen their weapons. Obtaining a drop of thousand source true fluid could save them tens of thousands of years of hard work. Ling Han didn't move. After all, the mountain winds here were very unpredictable. Who knew which direction the drop of thousand source true fluid would drift to when it fell? If he tried to snatch a spot now, it would be completely ridiculous. Time passed slowly, and the droplet of water grew larger at a steady pace. After an entire day, the drop of liquid finally reached the size of a pinky finger. It trembled slightly, and then broke free from the boulder before floating down. Whoosh! A gust of mountain wind blew over, and the drop of liquid instantly changed direction. Ling Han attacked. Pung! He stomped his foot, and a burst of astonishing speed erupted from his body. The terrifying thing about body cultivators was the speed at which they could activate and the explosive speed they could unleash in a short period of time. Xiao! He was as fast as lightning. He was far too powerful now, and he didn't even need to move. No one could stop him. Instead, the gust of wind he created powerful waves that knocked everyone around him off their feet. This was the ultimate power. 9 stars. At this moment, it was time for the 8 immortals to display their respective abilities. The elderly cultivators consumed the forbidden medicine, and their power began to soar. They were close to the Sun Moon tier, and then they also charged over, chasing after the drop of thousand source true fluid. In the face of such power, even cultivators at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier were completely powerless. They would be crushed into pieces with a single collision. No one cared about others. What a joke. With the thousand source true fluid right in front of them, who would care about others? Moreover, wasn't everyone here for the thousand source true fluid? Thus, standing here was equivalent to participating in the competition. It wouldn't be unreasonable for them to be sent flying or even crushed into pieces. Competition for treasures in martial art had always been intertwined with blood and death. Ling Han wasn't too bad. He had no intention of going on a killing spree, and he merely repelled everyone and restrained his power. In comparison, those who had severed their cultivation and consumed the forbidden medicine were much more ruthless. They didn't care about anything at all. They had severed their cultivation, which was equivalent to severing their lifespan. Although their clans and sects would definitely compensate them, It would be ridiculous if their mental state could remain the same as before. Thus, some people even deliberately killed others to vent their anger and resentment on others. The drop of thousand source true fluid had already fallen to the foot of the mountain, and it was the closest to a gray-robed elder. He laughed loudly and said, "I'll accept this drop of divine fluid. Wait for another day." He stretched out his hand to grab it. Once he stored it in his spatial spirit tool, he would immediately flee far away. He definitely wouldn't stay here any longer. There was a limit to how long the pill could last, and his power could only last for half a month at most. Moreover, since it was a forbidden pill, it would definitely be extremely destructive to one's body. Taking one pill in 100 years was already his limit. If he took two in succession, he would be completely courting death. Shio! A cold light streaked past as fast as lightning. It was the annihilating dragon star arrow. The gray-robed elder had no choice but to raise his hand to block it. However, this arrow was imbued with a powerful force, and his body was immediately knocked off course, away from the drop of divine fluid. Damn it! The elder stomped the ground forcefully, and his body returned to its original position. He stretched out his hand to grab it again. However, with this delay, a few elites nearby had already rushed over, and they also began to fight over the drop of divine fluid. Chapter 1190. Powerful existences appeared one after another, each displaying their own abilities. Right now, there were only 8 people who had reached the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier. However, Hu Feiyun didn't participate in the competition, so there were only 7 people left. In theory, the 7 of them should be the strongest, but that was only in theory. There were also many people who had severed their own cultivation. There were actually over 100 of them, and each of them was no weaker than the 7 king tiers. Added with the fact that they had once advanced to the sun-moon tier and grasped stronger regulations of heaven and earth, their battle prowess was incredibly powerful. There wasn't even a need for 100 people. Only 10 people were needed to team up, and even Shanjuer Shurangwa and the other young king tiers would have to frown and retreat temporarily. They would have to wait until the medicinal effects of their opponents disappeared before forcefully suppressing them. These hundreds of people fought, and the scene immediately became chaotic. However, Shanzhe Wuangwa and the others still displayed their superior prowess. Everyone's strength was about the same, but that didn't mean that their battle prowess was the same. This also depended on the techniques that they had mastered. A king tier was a king tier after all. Their cultivation levels were similar, but their battle prowess was a level higher. Apart from Wuxia, who was slightly weaker, the other 5 all charged at the very front, blasting away the others as they fought for the drop of thousand source true fluid. Scram! An elder stretched out a hand and pressed it down on Ling Han. Power that was close to the sun-moon tier vibrated. This was the highest power that this place could contain. At least this was the case for outsiders. Anyone who exceeded this power would be targeted by the restrictions. It's almost invincible. You're already so old, yet you're still so blunt with your words. You're really asking for a beating. Ling Han humphed. He unsheathed his divine demon sword and unleashed the lightning sword technique. What? The old man let out a muffled groan. His body had already been struck by the sword, and he was instantly sent flying. He turned pale with fright. This sword was too fast. He almost didn't catch the sword light's trajectory before he was cut down. Furthermore, the destructive power of this sword was extremely shocking. It tore apart his elemental energy shield and entered his flesh. Hiss, if they were to face each other head-on, the other party would definitely be able to cut him into pieces with a dozen or so sword strikes. How is that possible? So fast and so strong, how could they fuse together? Before he could even finish his thought, Ling Han had already charged over. Pung pung pung. After a few slashes, even more elites were sent flying, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. He felt that no matter how many times he tried, he would not be able to break through. Unless he was a lot stronger or had an advantage in numbers, he would definitely not be able to win in a one-on-one battle. Moreover, he would lose very quickly. Ling Han had been invincible all along the way, and had become the 7th young king tier in this place. Among the others, he should be ranked 6th. He was clearly stronger than Wuxia, because Wuxia had not been able to have such an overwhelming advantage when fighting against veteran elites. Damn it! Several of the veteran experts who had been sent flying were infuriated, and they launched a counterattack. All kinds of light danced chaotically, interweaving with each other as they attacked Ling Han. Ling Han laughed heartily, and simply borrowed their attacks to increase his speed. Pong, he was like a human cannonball, instantly blasting away the dozen or so people in front of him. Bearing the combined strength of quite a few experts, this collision of his was naturally extremely terrifying. Pung 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 pung. The crowd was sent flying like flowers scattered by heavenly maidens. However, Ling Han acted as if nothing had happened, and he continued to charge forward. The people nearby were all stunned. What kind of fighting style was this? He was like a fucking human-shaped weapon. Was there really such an exaggeration? After being bombarded by a series of attacks, he borrowed the force of the attacks to charge forward and knock away all those in his way. With this kind of defense, he was practically an undying monster. Who could injure him? Ling Han had already charged into the core of the battlefield. This was the battlefield of He Tao, Shunjur and the others. They continued to fight over the drop of divine liquid, yet none of them could succeed. Due to the collisions of all kinds of attacks, the divine liquid continued to bounce around in the sky. Humph! Shunjur and the others were extremely displeased that there was another competitor, and they attacked without holding back. Although they had already reached an agreement to work together to open a treasure trove in the end, they were still competitors before this. However, they all had a bottom line, and they definitely wouldn't kill the other 6 people. Ling Han laughed heartily. He completely disregarded the attacks of the 6 people, and he directly grabbed that drop of thousand source true fluid. His physique was freakish, and he could do as he pleased. Pung 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 pung. Countless attacks blasted toward him, yet Ling Han didn't even try to block them. However, these attacks only tore his clothes into shreds, and left a few bloody marks on his skin. Fuck! The 5 king tiers attacked together, yet they were only able to scratch Ling Han's skin a little. Everyone was petrified. Meanwhile, Ling Han took advantage of the chaos to snatch the flying drop of thousand source true fluid, and put it into his black tower. Hand it over. The 5 king tiers attacked in unison. Hurry up and hand it over. More veteran elites also attacked from the periphery. Their attacks covered the sky, and it was as if the heavens were collapsing. It was an incredibly terrifying scene. Ling Han couldn't even be bothered to parry the attacks, and he simply crossed his arms over his chest. Divine patterns intertwined with the attacks, creating a dazzling scene. Any one of these attacks was close to the level of the Sun-Moon tier. With so many attacks raining down at once, even an elite at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier would pale in fright. He definitely wouldn't dare to face them head-on. However, Ling Han didn't dodge or evade, and took all of the attacks head-on. Boom! The earth trembled and shockwaves surged. The sky was filled with dust. They saw that Ling Han had been sent flying. However, when he landed on the ground, everyone discovered to their astonishment that there were only some superficial wounds on his body. Putting aside the fact that he hadn't been smashed into smithereens, there wasn't even a single bone in his body that was broken. You want me to hand it over? That'll depend on whether you have the strength to do so. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Come, I don't mind playing with you all. You're being targeted by so many elites, yet you're actually just playing around? How arrogant." However, everyone had to admit that his physique was monstrous. What had just happened was clear proof. Even when 100 or so king tiers attacked him simultaneously, he was still completely unscathed. Then, who could truly threaten him? The 5 king tiers stopped first, and the other elites also stopped one after another. There was no point in continuing to fight, as they couldn't possibly snatch back the thousand source true fluid from Ling Han's hands. "I'm done," Ling Han said with a grin and sat down on the ground. "Why haven't you left yet?" someone asked. According to convention, those who had obtained thousand source true fluid would immediately leave. This was because it was far too dangerous to stay. They would be surrounded and attacked by others, and they wouldn't be a match for them no matter how powerful they were. Moreover, those who could obtain thousand source true fluid were definitely elites. If such an elite left, there would be one less competitor, which would be beneficial to the remaining people. This was the convention. Why should I leave? Ling Han asked with a smile. His physique was invincible, so he could naturally stay and fight for more thousand source true fluid. After all, there was no rule stating that he had to leave after obtaining a single drop. Chapter 1192. Ling Han was very powerful, truly very powerful. However, facing several dozen pseudo-Sun Moon tier elites, as well as 3 young king tiers, he was unable to break out of their encirclement. He was forcefully trapped, and only when the 1000 source true fluid was claimed did everyone release their encirclement. When the 5th drop of divine fluid appeared, the other half of the group began to surround him, and those who had previously surrounded him began to fight over it. Ling Han was dumbfounded. He had actually become public enemy number 1, and everyone was targeting him. Fuck, how could they be so shameless? Even further away, those who weren't qualified to compete for the divine fluid were all filled with admiration for Ling Han. He was only one person, yet he was able to force all the elites to team up against him. In fact, half of the elites had been sent to surround him, and even the young king tiers had participated. This showed just how powerful Ling Han was. Even Yang Hao hadn't received such treatment in the past. He had no choice but to retreat after being ganged up on. At least in the Mountain River tier, Ling Han had already surpassed Yang Hao. In fact, he could even be considered the strongest person in history. The 6th drop, the 7th drop. The elites continued to switch shifts, firmly trapping Ling Han in place. With so many people suppressing him together, although they could only inflict a small wound on Ling Han, they were completely capable of trapping him. How depressing. How did you guys suddenly become so united? Ling Han was extremely displeased, but the others didn't give him a chance. They continued to switch shifts until the 10th drop of divine fluid appeared. Those who had stopped him in the first round were no longer willing to give up. This was because the 11th drop of divine fluid hadn't appeared. And if they tried to stop Ling Han again, they would lose a round. The scene became chaotic again. Ling Han laughed loudly. This was what he had been waiting for. As he charged forward, he was invincible. Even veteran elites were sent flying by a single strike of his sword. If he encountered young king tiers, he would just have to take their attacks head-on. After a fierce battle, Ling Han successfully obtained the 4th drop of 1000 source true fluid, setting a new record. A single person had managed to obtain close to half of the divine liquid. This was a miracle, and perhaps no one would be able to make another breakthrough in the future. However, as long as this mystery realm still existed, Ling Han's achievements today had to be mentioned when talking about the 1000 source true fluid. It was clearly impossible to snatch the divine liquid from Ling Han. Who could break through his defenses? Here, even the power of the decree was restricted. Ling Han's defense was unbreakable. Thus, everyone merely cast a deep and meaningful glance at Ling Han before swaggering off. Even more people were calculating in their hearts. This was a super genius that was slowly rising up, and his future accomplishments would definitely not be inferior to Yang Hao's. Should they make friends with him? Brother Ling, let's meet at the appointed place. Shenji Hitao and the others left one after another. King tiers were indeed king tiers. Among the 6 of them, aside from Wuxia, everyone had obtained a drop of 1000 source true fluid, which was worthy of their strength. However, Wuxia had only broken through to the pinnacle realm not long ago, and his strength was much weaker than before. This time he had gained nothing. However, the 6 king tiers only had one more drop of 1000 source true fluid than Ling Han. In comparison, they naturally paled in comparison. Ling Han nodded at them. Competing was one thing, but opening the treasure trove in the future was a completely different matter. Ling Han had always been in favor of healthy competition, as long as one didn't use underhanded methods. Han Lin, 8 people appeared. 7 of them were extremely young, while the last one was an elder. He was an elite that had severed his own cultivation level. At this time he had consumed a forbidden alchemical pill, and his power had almost reached the Sun Moon tier. The aura that he exuded was extremely terrifying. Moreover, this was because he was suppressing his power. Otherwise, he should have been able to reach the Sun Moon tier. If that were the case, his battle prowess would have undergone a qualitative leap. Why was it said that even the power of 9 stars couldn't contend against a Sun-Moon tier elite, and that one had to have 10 stars? It was because advancing 1 star would cause an earth-shattering change in one's power. Without reaching 10 stars, one could only be considered pseudo-Sun-Moon tier. You've done very well, the elder said, his expression slightly arrogant. Who are you guys? You look like you know each other very well, and your tone is clearly that of a senior. Aren't you a bit too shameless? Young master will be very satisfied, the elder continued. Now you can give me 3 drops of 1000 source true fluid. So they were from the Gao faction. Ling Han finally understood. No wonder they felt so good about themselves. So it turned out that they were Gao Huang's subordinates. He couldn't help but laugh and said, "What are your brains made of? Why should I give you the divine fluid?" The elder humphed and said, "Han Lin, don't think that you're invincible here. If I truly unleash my might, your meager power won't be enough." Gao Huang had only casually asked Ling Han to give him 3 drops of 1000 source true fluid. Even if Ling Han gave him 1 drop of divine fluid, it would be enough to make him extremely satisfied. However, who would have thought that Ling Han would actually be so freakish? He had obtained as many as 4 drops of divine fluid. This was something that even the elder couldn't believe. His name was Ming, and he could be considered a senior of the Gao faction. He had also entered the Yellow Spring Mystery Realm several times, but he had never obtained a single drop of 1000 source true fluid. If he brought back 3 drops of divine fluid this time, he would naturally have made a great contribution, and his life would be considered over. However, he still had descendants, and these descendants would probably receive the care of the Gao faction. They would have incredibly bright futures. For the sake of his descendants, he had to force Ling Han to submit. Ling Han smiled faintly and asked, "Are you threatening me?" "It's not a threat, it's the truth." Ming humped coldly and said, "If I unleash my might, my battle prowess will advance to the Sun-Moon tier. However, if I use the power of the Sun-Moon tier here, it's possible that I'll be killed." "Oh, so you mean that you're not afraid of death?" Ling Han asked. Ming laughed loudly and said, "Who wouldn't be afraid of death? It's just that I have the resolve to die, but do you?" He had already placed all his hopes on his descendants. Thus, he would not hesitate to die to pave the way for his descendants. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh and said, "I find that you're quite pitiful. You've worked hard for others all your life, and never once have you lived for yourself." "Don't talk about this with me." Ming pointed at Ling Han and said, "Immediately hand over 3 drops of divine fluid, and I'll allow you to keep 1. You're still young and have plenty of opportunities to enter this place, or even other historical sites. There's no need for you to give up your life here." Ling Han shook his head and said with a smile, "Now even bandits have become so considerate. Unfortunately, no matter what you say, it can't change your nature as a bandit. Since you're so stubborn." Ming took a deep breath and revealed an expression of determination. He was going to use the true power of the Sun-Moon tier to suppress Ling Han, even if he would be targeted by the restrictions. He had the resolve to do so. "I'll send you on your way." He moved. Hong, the power that belonged to the Sun-Moon tier, finally burst forth. Multiple divine patterns intertwined, and instantly broke through the hundreds. This was a qualitative change. Even those at the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier could only possess 99 divine patterns, and only those at the Sun-Moon tier could master more than 100 divine patterns. The difference was that there was a qualitative difference between the divine patterns of the Sun-Moon tier and ordinary Mountain River tier, but the 99 divine patterns of the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier were of the same quality as those of the Sun-Moon tier. They were more complex and they were more powerful. This was the materialization of the regulations of heaven and earth. Different cultivation levels meant different qualities. Oh. Chapter 1193. Ming didn't mind being targeted by the restrictions, and unleashed his full battle prowess, displaying his might at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. In this mystery realm, this was definitely invincible power. Pung with a single strike, Ling Han was sent flying. He felt as if his body was boiling, and it was extremely uncomfortable. Even though he had the power of 9 stars now, which was only a tiny bit away from the limit of 10 stars, This tiny bit was a natural chasm. 9 stars belonged to the power of the mountain river tier, and 10 stars belonged to the sun-moon tier. No matter how freakish Ling Han was, he couldn't make up for the difference in power between the mountain river tier and the sun-moon tier. This time he didn't have the lion seal to use. Moreover, even if he did, he wouldn't dare to use it. The restrictions here targeted the power of the sun-moon tier, and he didn't want to be targeted. So what if you had the power of the sun-moon tier? As long as you were in the low extreme, you could only make him spit blood at most. If you wanted to pose a real threat to him, you had to be in the medium extreme. Ling Han climbed up as if nothing had happened, patted the dust off his body, and said with a smile, "You're indeed stronger than before, but it's far from enough to hurt me." Fuck? Shi Ming's eyes almost popped out in shock. His full power attack was blocked just like that? That was the attack of the sun-moon tier, and it should be able to kill all mountain river tier cultivators, but why couldn't it do anything to Ling Han? Monster. Definitely a monster. Ah! Shi Ming screamed in pain. His attack of the sun-moon tier was immediately targeted by the restrictions here. Poo pew pew. His whole body was covered in blood, and he instantly became a man of blood. However, this pain brought him back to his senses, and he glared at Ling Han resentfully, exuding killing intent. He wanted to kill this prodigy to pave the way for his descendants. Die! He was bathed in blood and he attacked Ling Han. His blood essence burned, resisting the restrictions, and giving him enough power to suppress Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. Aside from himself, no one knew how strong his physique was. The power of the low extreme of the sun-moon tier wanted to kill him? Not enough. Ling Han attacked, and the divine demon sword released endless light as he battled Shi Ming. Bang 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 every time Shi Ming attacked. He was able to send Ling Han flying. This was a suppression in terms of cultivation level. However, Ling Han would only spit out a few mouthfuls of blood at most. Shi Ming, on the other hand, was in an even worse state. His internal organs, godly bones, and meridians were constantly injured by the restrictions. Pa! When it came to the 20th move, he threw a punch, yet his entire arm exploded, turning into a rain of blood and bone fragments that filled the sky. The power of the sun-moon tier was too powerful, and this rain of blood possessed terrifying destructive power. There were still a few members of the Gao faction standing nearby. When they were swept by this rain of blood, they were instantly turned into bloody sieves. Only one person was lucky enough to survive, while the others were all killed in an instant. Shi Ming, on the other hand, had already entered a demonic barrier. He only had one thought in his mind now, and that was to kill Ling Han. Thus, he ignored the injuries on his body, and continued to bombard Ling Han madly. Pa! Another of his arms exploded, and he became an armless man. He still didn't stop attacking. His legs moved and he kicked at Ling Han. Papa! It wasn't long before Shi Ming's legs also exploded into a rain of blood. However, he still blew out a breath of air, and his body bounced back into the air. He charged at Ling Han again, looking as if he was determined to kill Ling Han. Even Ling Han felt some sympathy. Should this kind of person be pitied or hated? Pa! He didn't need to move. The restrictions had already exploded Shi Ming's body into pieces, but his eyes were still fixed on Ling Han, and he was about to unleash his final attack. However, he didn't manage to unleash this attack in the end, because his head had also exploded into pieces. Sun-moon tier cultivators could already be considered elites, yet he had died without a complete corpse. The remaining members of the Gao faction were so scared that they almost wet their pants. Trembling, they turned around and fled. This place was too dangerous. He wanted to directly run back to the entrance and wait for Venerable Trinity to open the mystery realm. He really didn't want to stay here for a moment longer. Ling Han sheathed his sword, shook his head, and walked toward Shui Yinyu and Hu Feiyun. If he trampled on profligate young masters, he would still feel some pleasure. For example, when he stepped on Gao Huang's face one day, he would definitely be in a very good mood. However, Shi Ming made him feel a little rueful, and his heart was a little heavy. This kind of person doesn't deserve sympathy, but there's no need to hate him either. Ling Han collected his thoughts, smiled at Shui Yinyu and Hu Feiyun and said, "Let's go." Hu Feiyun bit into a fruit, and said with a lisp, Ling Han, you're so greasy. Previously, Ling Han had killed his way in and out of the chaotic army, and her blood had been boiling. She was extremely in awe of Ling Han. Of course, Ling Han laughed loudly, and his mood couldn't help but improve slightly. The three of them walked for a while, and Ling Han suddenly felt a sense of danger. He suddenly stabbed his sword into the ground. Pooh! The sword light flashed and shot into the ground. Instantly, cracks appeared on the ground, spreading out like spider webs. Fuck you, you almost pierced through Grandpa Ginseng's chrysanthemum. A white figure shot out from the ground. Fuck your grandpa's treasured ginseng leg. Shua! This white figure shot toward Ling Han. That despicable ginseng. He really came and went like a shadow. He wanted to ambush Ling Han, but he didn't expect Ling Han's divine intent to spread out. His sneak attack failed, and instead Ling Han attacked first, almost stabbing him. Ling Han used the fast technique and stabbed toward the old ginseng. You want to kill Grandpa Ginseng? You're 10,000 years too early, the old ginseng shouted. His attacks were as quick as lightning, and regulations transformed into sabers, spears, and arrows, all of which shot toward Ling Han. Didn't you say I was 800 years too early last time? Ling Han said with a smile. Tui, that's because Grandpa Ginseng's strength has increased. The old ginseng darted into the sky and burrowed into the ground at an astonishing speed. Ling Han humphed and said, if you don't obediently come into my bowl, then don't blame me for being impolite. You dare to threaten Grandpa Ginseng? I'll kick you to death. The old ginseng flew into a rage, and his attacks became even more intense. Ling Han didn't hold back anymore. Boom! Terrifying flames surged out of his body, and divine patterns intertwined. Fuck, Grandpa Ginseng hates fire the most. The old ginseng wailed. He hurriedly retreated a few dozen meters and finally stopped attacking. Instead, he stood still, a look of fear on his face as he looked at the divine flames. He was only fast. The power of ice and divine flames could both restrain him. Despicable ginseng, what are you doing here again? Ling Han asked. The old ginseng sat down on a rock and crossed his legs, assuming an extremely lewd posture. Then he said, Grandpa Ginseng wants to give you an opportunity. Tui, acting like a pervert with a straight face? Ling Han smiled and said, oh? What opportunity can you give me? Are you planning to offer your body? Then hurry up and come into my bowl. Tui, Tui, Tui. Grandpa Ginseng isn't gay. Don't have any ideas about Grandpa Ginseng's chrysanthemum. The old ginseng immediately jumped up. Ling Han shook his head. This despicable ginseng had grown up in this mystery realm. Just how had he developed such a perverted character? Perverts were also born with, bring Grandpa Ginseng out of the mystery realm, and Grandpa Ginseng will gift you some divine liquid. The old ginseng stated his conditions. Rogue Ginseng, when did you attain Tao? And why do you want to leave this place? Grandpa Ginseng swallowed the essence of heaven and earth, and obtained the essence of the sun and moon. Stop, stop, stop. Don't brag, get straight to the point, Ling Han hurriedly interrupted. The old ginseng was extremely displeased. Couldn't he be allowed to brag for a while? He muttered to himself for a long time but finally spoke. Tens of thousands of years ago, he had awakened a hazy consciousness, and instinctively absorbed the essence of heaven and earth. He had begun to cultivate. However, it was only in the last few hundred years that he had finally grown a pair of hands and feet. He could break free from the shackles of the earth and travel the world. However, this place was still too small. Moreover, as he grasped more and more regulations of heaven and earth, he discovered that this place was targeting him and devouring him. This made him feel a strong urge to leave. However, although this place would open twice every 100 years, with people entering and exiting once, there were as many elites as there were clouds outside. He didn't dare to act rashly, afraid that he would be turned into ginseng soup if he left. However, he definitely had to leave this time. He had a feeling that if he missed this opportunity, there wouldn't be a next time. He wouldn't be able to endure for another 100 years, and he would be killed by the backlash of the mystery realm. Ling Han couldn't help but slap his thigh and say, if I had known this would happen, I would have set the conditions more viciously. Haha, you're still 20,000 years away from fighting with your grandpa Ginseng. The old ginseng said smugly. Ling Han chuckled. Fortunately, Hunyou wasn't here. Otherwise, with how smug this old ginseng was, he would probably be stuffed into a pot by that glutton and turned into soup in the next second. Brat, don't laugh so creepily. Grandpa Ginseng's goosebumps are about to appear. The old ginseng shivered. Where did you get the goosebumps from? Hu Feiyun asked curiously. The old ginseng instantly glared at her and said, Grandpa Ginseng is using a metaphor. Little girl, do you understand? You're not young, so why are you so stupid? Ling Han shook his head and said, Your mouth is so cheap. Sooner or later, you'll suffer greatly. Hey! In the 9 heavens and 10 earths, Grandpa Ginseng is free and unfettered. As long as I leave this place, who can capture Grandpa Ginseng? The old ginseng said nonchalantly, appearing to be extremely confident. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, In the future, I'll introduce you to someone. He couldn't wait to see the scene of Hunyou ravaging this old ginseng. For some reason, Ling Han believed that Hunyou would be able to subdue this old ginseng. The old ginseng was extremely quick-witted. When no one was around, he would brag and chat with Ling Han. Occasionally, he would also tease Shui Yanyu and Hu Feiyun. However, he would naturally be struck by Ling Han's sword until he cried out in pain. When outsiders came, he would burrow into the ground. In this place, no one would be able to discover him. Brat, you're going to the final treasure trove? The old ginseng's expression became grave when he learned about the destination of Ling Han's journey. That's not a good place. There were a few times when Grandpa Ginseng passed by that place, and I would tremble with fear. Oh, do you know the specifics? Although Ling Han had the Black Tower, and was confident that he could stay alive, the Black Tower wasn't omnipotent. If he was trapped there, it wouldn't be fun. The old ginseng shook his head and said, That place is filled with an aura of death. Grandpa Ginseng can't be bothered to go there. How would I know? Ling Han pondered for a moment but still decided to go. Firstly, he had already promised someone, so he couldn't break his promise. Secondly, he was also curious. After passing through Eagle Mountain, the environment here became desolate. One could see the aftermath of a great battle everywhere. The mountains that had been flattened showed just how intense the battle had been. This was a mountain range of the immortal realm, and it was extremely sturdy. Now it had been completely wiped out. The person who had done this had to be incredibly powerful. There were no demonic beasts or godly medicines. There was only a yellow spring surging in the sky. Oh! Chapter 1196. A beautiful romance. Numerous balls of light floated in the palace. If one looked closely, they would see that there were actually countless words moving about within the balls of light. However, the words were indistinct and they weren't very clear. Those are all cultivation techniques and inheritances. I think I've found the Great Net Calming Heart technique. Purple Smoke Palm technique. Bamboo Heart Sword. The 7 of them stared at the balls of light and spoke. The words in some of the balls of light were easier to read. What? I once found an incomplete copy of the Good Plains Heart Sutra in an ancient sect. This is an incredible cultivation technique. Even that ancient sect only had an incomplete copy. It's said that after one cultivates this technique, their origin power will be imbued with the power of lightning, and they will be able to easily break through their opponent's defenses. He Tao exclaimed in surprise. This was an ancient cultivation technique that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. It had been lost a long time ago, and only bits and pieces of it could be found in some ancient inheritances. Was this a complete ancient cultivation technique? Or was it just an incomplete copy? If it was complete, this cultivation technique would be extremely valuable. Now everyone knew that this was indeed a treasure trove. Its value was unimaginable. Xiao! Shunjur leaped into the air and grabbed one of the balls of light. Her speed was extremely fast and she quickly neared the ball of light. Just as she was about to grab the ball of light suddenly started to move. Furthermore, its speed was even faster than before, and it escaped at the last moment. Shunjur had used up all of her momentum in this leap, and her figure started to fall. She returned empty-handed. The remaining 6 people were all astonished. Shunju wasn't any weaker than any of them, yet her attack had failed. In that case, they might not be able to succeed either. It wouldn't be easy to obtain these inheritances. The 7 of them didn't speak anymore. Instead, they stared at the secret techniques that they had been struck by, and then reached out to grab them. At this moment, the balls of light in the air seemed to have come to life. They swam about like fish, and their movements were chaotic, dazzling the onlookers' eyes. After this round of grabbing, the 7 of them stopped one after another. When the last person also stopped, the balls of light also stopped, and they hung in the air like stars. This was really difficult to deal with. The 7 of them frowned. Although they were all king tiers of the younger generation, they were in a difficult situation. Xiao xiao xiao. However, right at that moment the 7 balls of light suddenly trembled. Then they shot rapidly towards the 7 of them. Ling Han's group of 7 hurriedly stretched out their hands to grab them. Pa pa pa. Each of them easily grabbed a ball of light. What was going on? Previously they couldn't catch him no matter how hard they tried. But now, he took the initiative to throw himself into their arms. Pa, 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 pa. The balls of light shattered one by one, and countless words and pictures appeared in the minds of the 7. They corresponded to various cultivation techniques and martial techniques. Ling Han did not know what the others had obtained, but he had obtained a movement technique called star chasing steps. When it reached the peak, it could step into the 9 heavens with a single step, pluck the stars and grab the moon. Of course, this was a little exaggerated, but it also showed how extraordinary this movement technique was. As for how far one could cultivate it, that would depend on one's luck and comprehension. He went through this movement technique in his mind, and felt that it was incredibly complicated. He would definitely not be able to understand it in a short period of time. He would need to spend at least a few years or even a dozen years or even a few decades on it. This was the case for all god-level cultivation techniques. Formations, pill recipes, and now movement techniques all required a very long time to comprehend, grasp, and use. However, Ling Han was not shocked. Instead, he was delighted. He had the reincarnation tree, so time was not a problem. Moreover, the longer he needed to comprehend a movement technique, the more precious and valuable it was. Shunju and the others also revealed expressions of delight. It was clear that they had each obtained an extraordinary secret technique. They all raised their heads to look at the balls of light in the sky, and expressions of determination appeared on their faces. Any random ball of light that descended was a supreme secret technique. If they could obtain all of them, their value would be indescribably high. However, no more balls of light descended. It was as if giving them one was their reward for opening this place. The 7 of them started to chase after the balls of light again. Of course, they all failed. When they finally stopped, they did not see a second batch of balls of light descend. This disappointed them greatly. The treasure mountain was right in front of them, but they could not find a way to enter it. How hateful. Hee, do you want more cultivation techniques? A voice suddenly rang out. It was faint, and it seemed as if the voice was right beside their ears. However, it also seemed as if it was far away. Who is it? The 7 king tiers were all shocked and they shouted fiercely. Show yourself. Don't sneak around. Do you want to see me so badly? The voice drifted through the air again. Wisps of black aura floated through the air. This aura was the same as the black aura outside. Furthermore, there was an additional aura of death in this aura. This aura condensed into a humanoid figure that appeared in the center of the 7 king tiers. Who are you? Shurangua immediately asked. I am naturally the master of this place, the gaseous figure replied. Ling Han and the others looked at each other. They all bowed and said, Greetings, senior. They were all proud individuals, so they naturally would not kneel. However, it was a fact that they had obtained this person's secret technique, so it was only right for them to bow. The gaseous figure raised a hand. His figure was not stable, and it continuously fluttered and twisted. You are all outstanding geniuses. You are qualified to receive my supreme inheritance. Thank you, senior. The 7 king tiers bowed again. However, I only need a successor. Which one of you is willing to take me as your master? The gaseous figure asked again. Ling Han and the others looked at each other again. They all asked, Who does Senior want to take as his disciple? Chapter 1197. The gaseous figure was a little annoyed, and even more so a little unable to accept this. There were 7 of them, yet not a single one was willing to acknowledge him as their master? Did they all think that they were Genesis tier saints? He said calmly, "Since none of you are willing to acknowledge me as your master, then the secret techniques of this place are not fated to be with you." He paused for a moment, and looked at the 7 of them again. A smug expression appeared on his face when he saw that everyone's eyes were twitching slightly. He didn't believe that these juniors would still be able to keep their hearts and resist the temptation when there were so many secret techniques in front of them. However, these secret techniques are useless to me, so there's no harm in giving them all to you, the gaseous figure continued. He paused again as he spoke. He was always stuck at crucial moments. Ling Han took the lead and said, "Come, what conditions do you have, Senior?" The gaseous figure smiled and said, "It's not really a condition. I've already transformed into Tao, and all that's left behind is a wisp of my will. It's impossible for me to pluck those secret techniques even if I want to. Thus, I need one of you to act as my body in order to pluck those secret techniques. Whoever wants these secret techniques will have to lend their body to me. Otherwise, there's nothing I can do." A solemn expression appeared on Ling Han and the others' faces when they heard this. Wasn't this possession? It sounded nice and they could borrow the body to pluck the secret technique light orb. However, what if he didn't retreat in the end? Moreover, he said that he had already transformed into Tao, and only left behind a wisp of his will. However, could this be guaranteed? If this was a remnant soul, then allowing it to enter their body would be equivalent to sending a lamb into a tiger's den. Who wants the secret techniques? The gaseous figure asked, his voice filled with temptation. Ling Han and the others didn't say anything, and they all assumed defensive stances. Although this gaseous figure had acted very courteous from the get-go, who knew if he would fly into a rage out of humiliation after being rejected? "Is there no one?" the gaseous human asked again. When he saw that Ling Han and the others didn't seem to have any intention of answering him, he couldn't help but sigh and say, "I originally wanted to use the easier method, but now I can only use the harder method." His eyes swept over, and he pointed at Ling Han and said, "You are the physical body most suited to me. The toughness of your physique is something that even I have never seen before. Being able to cultivate to this level at the mountain river tier is something that has never been seen before. Your divine sense is also astonishingly tough, and I am not confident that I can erase it." "Thank you for your praise, Senior. It's just that Senior seems to be a bit short-sighted. The world is so big, and there are so many capable people," Ling Han said indifferently. The other party had tried to be polite before resorting to force. He had first used a secret art like candy to attract people, but when he realized that no one had fallen for it, he had begun to use a big stick. Since that was the case, there was no need for Ling Han to be polite. Moreover, the other party had tempted him with benefits. What did that mean? This gaseous figure definitely wasn't as powerful as an Eternal River tier elite. Otherwise, why would he need to trick Mountain River tier cultivators like them? However, the gaseous figure didn't get angry. He merely shook his head and said, "I have roamed the world for countless years, so what prodigies haven't I seen? Heh." He then turned to Shanjur and said, "I can sense a powerful bloodline in this little girl's body. It's a pity, what a pity. Her divine sense is protected by a secret art, and with my current strength I can't shake it." He pointed out the strengths of each of the 7 cultivators, causing all 7 of them to feel astonished. This person's judgment was far too brilliant. His words weren't wrong at all. In the end, the gaseous figure pointed at Wuxia and said, "You are the weakest, and your talent is also the worst. You aren't the best vessel for my soul. However, you are the easiest to occupy, so I won't be picky." After saying this, the gaseous figure suddenly transformed into a streak of light that shot toward Wuxia. Wuxia was naturally prepared for this, and he hurriedly crossed his palms, raising his power to the peak. Close to 90 divine patterns appeared, and they tightly wrapped around him. Because he didn't know what this gaseous figure was, he didn't hope to be successful. He only hoped that he wouldn't make any mistakes. He wanted to protect himself first. Divine patterns flashed. These were the regulations of heaven and earth, and they were also the might of the pinnacle level. However, they were completely useless against this strange gas. This gas passed through his defenses and entered through Wuxia's mouth. Ah! Wuxia instantly screamed. He spread his arms and legs and he raised his head to look up. The gas was endlessly entering his mouth, forming a cloud above his head. It was an incredibly strange sight. Humph! Ling Han and the others naturally wouldn't stand idly by. They all drew their god tools and slashed at the gas above them. Gagaga, you think you can harm me with just your strength? Who knows how many epochs you've passed? A voice sounded from the gas, directly entering their minds. This was a voice transmission through their divine sense. No matter how the 6 king tiers attacked, the gas only continued to change shape. They couldn't harm this mysterious being at all. This gas was also endlessly entering Wuxia's body, causing his stomach to swell up at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a short period of time, Wuxia's stomach had already become bigger than a wok of oil. It was as if he had become a super fatty, and his expression was one of extreme pain. The veins on his face were pulsing, and his eyeballs looked like they were about to pop out of their sockets. The shape of his face was also changing. One moment it was himself and the next moment it was another face. It was incredibly strange. Xiao. At this moment, the last bit of gas entered Wuxia's mouth, and his stomach suddenly returned to its original state. It was as if what had just happened was just an illusion. He looked blankly at Ling Han and the others. He stretched out his hand, and was just about to say something, when he suddenly grabbed his own head and screamed again. A terrifying aura surged out from his body. It was sinister, evil and filled with an aura of death. It was just like the yellow springs outside. Not good. He's about to be possessed. Once he succeeds, his strength might undergo an astonishing transformation. Ling Han and the other 5 cried out in surprise. Possession was a very rare occurrence. Generally, which expert would be willing to give up their own physical body to occupy another person's body? Taking over someone else's body meant giving up one's original cultivation. Moreover, the rules of heaven and earth use the divine soul as the benchmark to determine a person's lifespan. Even if an expert who was about to die of old age took over the body of a young martial artist, it was impossible to recalculate his lifespan with the young body. But if he really allowed this mysterious being to successfully possess him, then it was extremely likely that he was at the eternal river tier, and his battle prowess would definitely be terrifyingly elevated. Kill. Wu Wentong made a prompt decision. Given Wuxia's strength, there was no way he could resist the mysterious being's possession. In that case, it was also impossible for them to expel the other party's divine sense. Thus, the only thing they could do was to kill Wuxia before the possession was complete. Kill. Shunzhuer said with a nod. The disciples of the majestic heaven sect couldn't kill each other, but that depended on the situation. The current Wuxia was no longer Wuxia. Instead, he would become a terrifying demon. Behead in swaddling clothes, the 6 of them attacked Wuxia at the same time. Chapter 1198. Although Wuxia was also a king tier of the younger generation, he had to admit that he was the weakest among the 7. This was also one of the reasons why he had been targeted by the mysterious being. The weaker one was, the easier it would be to possess them, and the higher their chances of success would be. Possession was a heaven-defying act. Even such a powerful being had to be careful, and they could only choose a weakling like Wuxia to maximize their chances of success. Right now, Wuxia was being attacked by the combined attacks of 6 king tiers. He would probably be insta-killed in a single strike. Wang. Wuxia raised his left hand and pressed down lightly. An invisible power appeared and froze the attacks of the 6 king tiers in place. He broke into a smile and said, "Don't be impatient. I'll kill all of you after I've completely adapted to this body." This smile was incredibly sinister and sinister. Ling Han and the others were astonished. How was this possible? There were restrictions here that targeted power at the Sun Moon tier and above. However, Wuxia had managed to freeze their attacks with a single strike. This power had definitely surpassed the mountain river tier. Why weren't there any backlash from the restrictions? This isn't power but regulations, Wuxia said with a smile. However, there was a black aura swirling around his face at this moment. He was naturally no longer the person he had been before. Instead, he was the mysterious being that had been possessed. He kindly explained, I stood at the peak of the eternal river tier in the past, and I was only a step away from advancing into the Genesis tier. My grasp of regulations isn't something you weaklings can imagine. He twisted his body lightly. Pa pa pa. His bones crackled, and his body underwent a massive transformation. It was as if he were modifying his body to adapt to his habits. Break! Ling Han and the others all unleashed their might and broke free. Although Wuxia had once stood at a frightening height, he was only left with a wisp of his soul, after all. He was relying on the body of a mountain river tier to display his might. It would be unreasonable if he still possessed the battle prowess of an eternal river tier elite. Ling Han and the others were king tiers of the younger generation. Even if there were other young king tiers in the vast immortal realm, they would probably only be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. They had all cultivated to the peak stage of the pinnacle level, and it would be extraordinarily difficult to surpass them. However, Shanjura and the others didn't dare to use their 10 stars of power. Otherwise, they would have to endure the backlash of the restriction. If that happened, they wouldn't be increasing their battle prowess. Instead, they would be seeking death. All 6 of them unleashed their most powerful attacks, bombarding Wuxia in a frenzy. Wuxia remained calm and unruffled, using only a single hand to deal with the attacks. In fact, the laws he used were also extremely simple. It was merely a few divine inscriptions, yet they had an unexpected effect, easily blocking the attacks of the 6 kings. On the other hand, he was still modifying his body. Bone spurs protruded from his back, and a single horn grew from his forehead, glowing with a faint silver luster. If Wuxia still had his own consciousness, he might feel gratified. This was because even though he was one of the 7 kings before, he was undoubtedly the weakest link. But now, he was able to take on the combined attacks of 6 kings by himself, and it was extremely easy. This was an absolutely unimaginable achievement. If word of it got out, it would make him the #1 genius in the world. Unfortunately, he was no longer Wuxia. Comfortable. It's really comfortable. Wuxia stretched his neck. His current body was at least twice as tall and his physique was more muscular. His skin was extremely tanned and there were patches of it. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that they were actually divine inscriptions. They seemed to be natural, and there were no signs that they were man-made. He stretched lazily, and a smile appeared on his face. He stared at Ling Han and the others and said, "Stinky bugs, let me think about how I should kill you. Should I steam you or braise you?" "Fuck you." Ling Han retreated into the distance. He unsheathed his annihilating dragon star arrow and shot it at Wuxia. Pa! Wuxia stretched out his right hand and clamped 2 fingers together, trapping the origin power arrow between his fingers. This was too frightening. The annihilating dragon star arrow was extremely fast, yet it had been caught between 2 fingers. This arrow is a little interesting. If it weren't for the fact that my grasp of the regulations of heaven and earth is far superior to yours, I might have really been pierced. He said with a grin. It worked. Shanjura exclaimed excitedly. His fingers are injured. True enough, there was fresh blood flowing between Wuxia's fingers. Damn it. Wuxia's expression changed and he said, "This body is still too weak." Although his grasp of regulations is far superior to ours, his physical body hasn't become stronger because of this. His power hasn't changed either, Shurangua immediately said. "It's not like we don't have a chance to defeat him," Hitao said. The 6 of them nodded in unison. They were all king tiers of the current generation, and their willpower was as tough as steel. Although the current situation was dire, they didn't panic. Instead, they calmly analyzed the situation. Wuxia chuckled coldly and said, "So what? Under the suppression of my regulations of heaven and earth, what can you do?" He stretched out his hand. Boom! Numerous divine inscriptions lit up on his body, transforming into divine chains that shot toward the 6 king tiers. Ling Han and the others hurriedly dodged. Wuxia's power wasn't much weaker than theirs, and added with the fact that he had far surpassed the regulations of heaven and earth, his battle prowess was already far beyond what they could contend against. Ha ha ha! Wuxia laughed loudly. It seemed like he still had a shred of his own willpower left. Otherwise, why would he be so smug even if he could suppress a few mountain river tier ants with a flip of his hand? Ling Han unleashed his annihilating Dragon Star arrow, firing origin power arrows one after another as he tried to maintain his distance from his opponents. This was an attack that could threaten Wuxia. Even Wuxia didn't dare to be careless. His battle prowess was indeed powerful, but his cultivation level was only at the mountain river tier, after all. This was a massive weakness, and he had to deal with Ling Han's attack first. Otherwise, his physical body would be in great trouble if he was struck by an arrow. In this way he bought space for everyone to move, and also gave the young king tiers time to unleash their powerful attacks. Green bamboo kill! Shinjur exclaimed. The space between her brows split open, and a small green bamboo appeared. However, the moment it appeared, it rapidly grew in size, and transformed into a towering bamboo. However, it didn't have a specific shape, so it wasn't affected by this limited space. The green bamboo trembled and countless green leaves fell from it, transforming into numerous bamboo swords that swept toward Wuxia. Purple flames! Shi Ongwa roared, and flames danced around his body. He clapped his hands and a fire lion appeared. Its body was covered in purple divine flames, and it charged toward Wuxia. Torrential black water! He roared. One of his eyes was tightly shut, and the other was wide open. A black river of spirits surged out. The 6 king tiers all unleashed their ultimate techniques. None of them dared to hold back at this moment. Otherwise it was possible that they would all die here. Boom! Divine light soared into the sky, sweeping toward Wuxia. Chapter 1200. What? Wuxia turned pale with fright. Lan Yun, you're still alive? He looked at the corpse on the ground. The blue-skinned corpse chuckled as it crawled to its feet. Its 10-meter-tall body cast a long shadow on the ground. Ling Han and the others were all astonished. Although they had suspected that this mysterious being wasn't the true master of this place, they were still astonished to see the blue-skinned elite stand up again. Wuxia stared at the blue-skinned elite. After a while he laughed loudly and said, "So you're really dead? You're just a remnant consciousness that has entered your original body." Indeed. The blue-skinned elite nodded. However, it's more than enough to kill you. Wuxia's expression changed and he exclaimed, "Did you set this up on purpose? Did you wait for my divine soul to leave the earth's core and possess this body so that you could kill me?" The blue-skinned elite laughed loudly and said, "What else could I do? You were hiding in the earth's core, but I was on the brink of death back then. I couldn't possibly chase you all the way to the earth's core to kill you. How could I not lure you out?" "Well, you're really good at holding back," Wuxia said. "It's already been tens of millions of years, and your corpse is about to turn to dust. Why are you still so stubborn? Why must you kill me?" "Humph. Even if I die 1,000 times, I won't let you off, you freak of the netherworld." The blue-skinned elite roared. "What? This mysterious being is from the netherworld?" No wonder the blue-skinned elite was filled with hatred and killing intent toward the netherworld when he carved those words into the ground. Combined with the traces of battle outside, it could be deduced that these two elites must have engaged in a great battle. In the end, the blue-skinned elite had probably won, but he had suffered a fatal injury and was about to die. Meanwhile, the mysterious being's body had been destroyed, and only his divine soul was left. However, due to the special nature of the netherworld, he had been hiding in the earth's core, struggling at death's door. After tens of millions of years, the mysterious being thought that the blue-skinned elite had died, so he seized the opportunity to possess his body and begin his second life. That's right, this place was densely covered with restrictions. They were probably used to suppress the mysterious existence, so that he could only appear in the palace. Otherwise, the mysterious existence would have been able to escape long ago, since this secret realm had been opened many times. He wouldn't have had to wait until the palace opened this time. He had thought that the blue-skinned elite had set up these traps to imprison him for all eternity. However, he hadn't expected that this was actually a trap within a trap. The blue-skinned elite had only done this to make him feel safe. After emerging from the Earth's core and possessing the blue-skinned elite, his divine sense naturally wouldn't be able to wander around. And with his current physical body, it was extremely fragile. Wuxia's entire body was trembling. Even when his physical body had been smashed to pieces, he hadn't felt such anxiety and fear. That was because he had just taken over a body, and it was impossible for his divine soul to escape. "Lan Yuan, you really have a good plan," he said through gritted teeth. "How can I not scheme against a coward like you?" The blue-skinned elite chuckled. "Don't even think about buying time. Although I've only left behind a wisp of my will, it won't be a problem for it to last for 3 to 5 days. Wuxia's expression changed again. He was indeed trying to stall for time. Unlike him, the blue-skinned elite had truly died. Only a wisp of his will remained. However, this was a rootless flame that would soon be extinguished. However, 3 to 5 days was far too long. The blue-skinned elite hated netherworld beings to the core, so how could he possibly give Wuxia 3 to 5 days? He wouldn't be able to boast for that long even if he cracked his lips. "Die, sunken old demon," the blue-skinned elite roared. Boom! A devastating power swept over, causing even the heavens to tremble. This was a power that surpassed the heavenly body tier. Why didn't the restrictions attack him? What a joke! He was the master of this place, so how could the restrictions attack him? Boom! The blue-skinned elite's palm landed, and Wuxia instantly transformed into a rain of blood. His physical body was far too fragile, so how could it possibly rival the power of an eternal river tier elite? However, the blue-skinned elite didn't relax. Instead, he continued to search for Wuxia with his divine sense. Netherworld elites weren't so easy to kill. Previously, he had destroyed the blue-skinned elite's body. Yet hadn't his divine sense still managed to escape? Humph! Trying to escape? The blue-skinned elite attacked again. This time he slammed his palm toward the door. Pung! The door was forcefully shattered, and a shadow that was extremely difficult to capture with the naked eye hurtled out. It was that netherworld elite. Ling Han and the others all sucked in a breath of cold air. An eternal river tier elite had attacked. Moreover, he had such a huge advantage in cultivation level. Yet, he still hadn't been able to kill the netherworld elite with a single strike. This was unimaginably powerful. "Lan Yuan, you actually forced me to use this technique. Even if you die, I'll turn your bones into dust." The shadow flew toward the yellow spring in the sky. This was the corpse of a netherworld elite. If he fused with it with his divine sense, he would obtain immense power. However, his old body was already dead. Thus, the yellow spring was extremely harmful to him. It was like a mouthful of poison. However, he had no choice but to fight with everything he had. Otherwise, he would die. As long as he didn't die, there was a chance that he could be healed, no matter how severe his injuries were. The blue-skinned elite humphed and said, "I've planned this for millions of years, so how could I possibly fail at the last moment?" His figure flashed and he actually dashed out at an incredible speed. His fist smashed into the yellow spring. "Star-chasing step," Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. Although he hadn't started cultivating this movement technique yet, he could tell with a single glance. Hua! The blue-skinned elite's body trembled, and he transformed into a giant that was 3,000 meters tall. He blocked the yellow spring, and he stood proudly between heaven and earth. The netherworld elite wanted to vomit blood. He couldn't borrow the power of the yellow spring anymore. "You used your body to withstand the power of the dark yellow spring," he said in a stern voice. "You'll soon turn into bones. Don't you want to die?" He subconsciously thought that the blue-skinned elite was a living person. However, he quickly realized that although the blue-skinned elite was alive and kicking in front of him, his body had long since lost its vitality. There was only a remnant consciousness supporting him, and it couldn't last for long. Since that was the case, what did it matter whether his body turned into bones or not? He had already been dead for tens of millions of years. Ha ha ha. I've waited for this day for far too long. The blue-skinned elite stretched out his hand and pressed down on the shadow. Divine patterns intertwined, and the light of regulations shone brilliantly. This was the true power of the eternal river Tyr. No, the netherworld elite screamed in despair. This divine sense instantly spread throughout the entire mystery realm. This was the ultimate song of an eternal river Tyr elite. There was a strong sense of unwillingness in the sky, as well as an eerie aura that caused one to shiver. This was the martial art intent that was unique to netherworld cultivators. It's finally over, the blue-skinned elite said with a smile of relief. Boom! His massive body collapsed and he rapidly shrank. Then, he was swept away by the yellow spring, becoming one of the tens of thousands of dead souls. An elite of a generation had finally disappeared from this world. Ling Han and the others were all rendered speechless. They hadn't played any role in this battle, and they had only been bait. A mighty King Tyr of the younger generation had actually been reduced to bait. Chapter 1201. They were King Tyrs, yet they could only be used as bait. This caused Ling Han and the others to feel extremely sullen. However, this was the truth. Regardless of how talented they were still nothing in front of the power of an eternal river Tyr elite. As a result, Wuxia had been sacrificed, becoming a vessel for the netherworld elite. In the end, he had been mercilessly killed. In the eyes of the blue-skinned elite, the top prodigies of this galaxy were like rubble. They didn't even have the right to make him hesitate. This kind of fate could have befallen any one of them. Why did it have to be Wuxia? It was only because his divine sense was the weakest among the 7 of them. As such, it was the easiest for him to be possessed. They couldn't accept such an outcome. They could die in battle, but such a death would be far too useless and worthless. However, who could they complain to? The blue-skinned elite was dead, and the netherworld elite was also dead. Even their true creditor Wuxia was dead. The 6 of them were speechless for a long time. Only the yellow spring continued to surge. This was formed from the body of an eternal river Tyr elite, and even though millions of years had passed, it was still surging endlessly. It was as if there was no end to it. They all understood why this yellow spring was so eerie and frightening. It was because this was a power from the netherworld. Shurangwa was the first to break the silence, and said, "Let's return to the palace and see if we can obtain some more secret techniques." Everyone nodded. The matter had already passed, and the dead couldn't be revived. There was no point in continuing to dwell on it. They returned to the palace, and the light orbs were still silently floating in the sky. However, when they made a move, these light orbs would still dodge, not giving them any chance to snatch them. With their strength, they wouldn't be able to obtain any more treasures here. Since the 6 of them were the young King Tyrs of the current generation, they naturally knew when to let go. They decisively didn't go to the light orbs in the sky, and instead returned resolutely. There were still many valuable things on the way back, such as godly medicines and ancient buildings. Perhaps there would be ancient techniques left behind in these buildings. Staying here was a complete waste of time. If they returned, they would at least obtain some treasures, albeit more or less. After leaving the palace, they took one last look at the place where Wuxia had died. However, not even a single complete bone was left behind. All of them shook their heads and strode away. After leaving for a long while, Ling Han released Shui Yanyu and Hu Feiyun from the Black Tower. When that old ginseng also appeared, his expression darkened, and he said, "Damn brat, what kind of spatial vessel is that? Why is it so freakish?" He had almost been planted by the artifact spirit inside, and his mind had almost been erased, turning him into a divine medicine of heaven and earth for human consumption. There was also an old divine tree inside, and its grade was who knew how many levels higher than his. He had to obediently call it Grandpa. Also, the divine soul of a saint was entwined around the branches of the old tree. Although the divine aura was no longer there, it still made him tremble in fear. Ling Han chuckled and said, "Fun, right? Fun your sister. If Grandpa Ginseng doesn't stomp you to death, you actually dare to scare your grandpa." The more the old ginseng spoke, the angrier he became. He kicked out at Ling Han. Ling Han blocked a few attacks, and the old ginseng was only venting. He didn't want to turn against Ling Han, so he naturally stopped. What a big temper, Ling Han said with a smile. The old ginseng's eyes swiveled and he said to Shui Yinyu, "Beauty, do you want to change partners? Grandpa Ginseng is definitely better than that brat." Grandpa Ginseng's body is full of treasures. Just taking a breath of it can increase your lifespan by 3 years and make you 10 years younger. Ayo. He was hit on the head by Ling Han and instantly clutched his head and cried out in pain. They walked back and returned to the herb mountain in a few days. Ling Han began to break the restrictions again and tried to collect as many high-level godly medicines as he could. However, the amount of time needed to break through a single prohibition was far too long. Therefore, after obtaining 2 stalks of godly medicine, they were forced to return. They walked against the yellow spring and soon arrived at the place where they had first entered. There were already a great many people waiting here. Because there were only a mere 3 days until the half-year deadline, they naturally had to rush here in advance. If they missed the opportunity to leave, then they could only wait for death here. "Master!" Ding Ping ran over first, followed by Mu Rongqing and the others. These people hadn't reached the consummate level of the mountain river tier, so they hadn't gone to places like the Eagle's Beak Mountain. Instead, they had deviated from the normal route and were searching for their own fated opportunities. Their gains were quite plentiful. Second brother still hasn't returned? Ling Han asked. The Rain Emperor was missing from the group that had entered. Feng Peyun and the others all shook their heads. Because everyone had moved separately, they didn't know what fated opportunities the Rain Emperor had encountered, or what trouble he had encountered. With second brother's strength and intelligence, even if he encountered any trouble, he should be able to successfully escape, Ling Han said. He had this kind of confidence in the Rain Emperor. Big sister Shui, 9th king, why are you two here? Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner walked over. They were also disciples of the majestic heaven sect, so they were naturally allowed to enter this place. Ling Han hadn't acknowledged them before, so they didn't know Ling Han's identity. They only felt it was very strange. Why would Shui Yinyu and Hu Feiyun be together with such a strange man? Especially Shui Yinyu. Wasn't she on intimate terms with Ling Han? Could it be that she had dumped Ling Han just because he hadn't appeared for 3 years? That stupid blockhead was so pitiful. Shui Yinyu nodded at the 2 girls, and Hu Feiyun immediately became enthusiastic. She immediately chatted with the 2 girls. She was very young, so she naturally yearned for playmates of the same age to share her joys and sorrows. Thankfully, Hu Feiyun still kept the secret that Han Lin was Ling Han, and didn't say anything. This was only because Li Weiwei and Ji Yun didn't ask. Otherwise, Ling Han didn't believe that she could keep her mouth shut with her muddle-headedness. However, 1 or 2 days passed, and the Rain Emperor still didn't appear. This time Ling Han and the others were all anxious. There was still 1 more day before the Mystery Realm would reopen, and everyone had to leave. Otherwise, those who stayed would stay forever. What had happened to the Rain Emperor? Amidst everyone's anxiety, the 3rd day arrived as promised, but there was still no sign of the Rain Emperor. Wang's space twisted and a door silently opened, revealing a passageway. One could see a giant opening his hands and tearing open this space. Venerable Trinity. We can leave. Let's go. Everyone left. But because there were too many people, the evacuation couldn't be completed in a short time. Where's second brother? Why isn't he back yet? Mu Rongqing was anxious. Ling Han was also anxious, but he suddenly had a thought and said, second brother might be the chosen one. What chosen one? Feng Peyun and the others asked. Ling Han said, previously, I entered the residence of the master of this place. He once left a message, saying that when the 7 stars are in place, my successor will appear. The 7 stars should be me, He Tao, and the others. We opened the palace together, and my successor has appeared. That senior should have chosen a successor. I originally thought it would be one of the 7 people, but now it should be someone else. It's very likely to be second brother. Chapter 1202. Second brother has obtained the inheritance of an eternal river tier elite? Mu Rongqing became excited. That must be the case. With second brother's talent, he definitely has the right to do so. Feng Peyun nodded slowly. He had to admit that the Rain Emperor's talent might not be inferior to Ling Han's. This brat is really lucky, Helian Tianyun said with slight jealousy. Ling Han thinking this way was only to make himself feel at ease, and more importantly, to give himself hope. Otherwise, he would lose a second brother forever. The crowd walked out, but Ling Han and the others didn't move. That was what they said, but they didn't have any concrete information. They couldn't be sure that the Rain Emperor had obtained the inheritance, so they wanted to wait a little longer. Finally, only they hadn't left. Hurry up and come out, Venerable Trinity shouted. Why were these guys still lingering? Didn't they know that even he had to expend a great deal of effort to maintain the passage? Ling Han nodded, grabbed everyone, and left the mystery realm. Xiao, the passage immediately closed. Venerable Trinity said, "Leave quickly." Yes. With this supreme elite opening the path, everyone quickly left the valley. Venerable Trinity didn't care anymore, and directly flew into the sky. He Tao Shenjur Ling Han, a heavenly body tier elite called out. They were the names of the 7 young king tiers. Quickly return to the sect and report to the 7 Rain Hall. Ling Han and the others hurriedly accepted the order, but Wuxia would forever stay in the mystery realm, unable to return to the sect. They also understood that the sect naturally summoned them for the inheritance they had obtained in the palace. The sect already knew that the 7 of them could open the door to the treasure vault if they worked together. Thus, after they left the mystery realm, they naturally had to summon them and ask about their gains. If it was valuable enough, the sect would naturally make a copy. Everyone returned. The disciples of the Majestic Heaven sect returned to the Majestic Heaven sect, and those who didn't return to their own places. This was Death Valley, and apart from the Yellow Spring Mystery Realm, there was no other value. Naturally, no one would stay here. Ling Han and the others didn't leave immediately. They still wanted to wait for the Rain Emperor. But 10 days had passed, and there was still no sign of the Rain Emperor. Let's go. If second brother really obtains the inheritance, then when he's accomplished in his art, he'll naturally come back to find us, Feng Peyun said. Ling Han thought about it and nodded. There was no point in waiting here. Besides, he had received orders to return to the sect as soon as possible. If this was Venerable Trinity's intention, and he made this elite wait for too long, even Empress Luanxing wouldn't be able to protect him. They returned to the Majestic Heaven sect. With the cloud-piercing shuttle, their speed was naturally ridiculously fast. Although they had waited an extra 10 days, they had only returned to the sect a day or two later than the others. Ling Han first went to the 7 Rain Hall, which was located on the cloud-piercing peak of the main peak. However, when he reported his name and was summoned by an elite of the Sun Moon tier, He Tao and the others did not arrive. Presumably, they had already been here before, or perhaps they had not yet returned to the sect. What secret technique did you obtain from the treasure trove? The Sun Moon tier elite asked directly. Presumably, Shanjur and the others had already returned and told him the truth. This wasn't strange. The problem was, did these people really report the secret technique that they had obtained? Did they casually report a cultivation technique? Ling Han hesitated. Should he hand over the star-plucking step? In the few days that he had been waiting and returning, he had continuously studied this movement technique. However, even after comprehending it under the reincarnation tree for more than 10 days, Ling Han still hadn't been able to grasp this movement technique. In fact, he was still quite far from mastering it. One could imagine how high the level of this movement technique was. Handing it over for no reason? Don't worry, the sect won't take your secret technique for free. They will definitely give you a corresponding reward, the Sun Moon tier elite said. Ling Han thought for a moment. Even if he wanted to find another secret technique to replace the star-plucking step, he wouldn't be able to find one in a short time. Whether it was the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art, the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, or the Universal 8 Desolation Technique, the value of these secret techniques might not be lower than the star-plucking step. In fact, they might even surpass it. Thus, he thought for a moment, and then said, I obtained a movement technique called the star-plucking step. Write down the secret technique, and you will be rewarded according to its level, the Sun Moon Tier elite urged. Ling Han nodded and began to write down the movement technique. However, after writing down a paragraph, he was astonished. This was because there was a part of the inheritance that could only be understood and couldn't be expressed in words or language. Moreover, after skipping this part, the might of this movement technique would plummet. He faltered slightly. So be it. In any case, he wasn't greedy for any reward from the sect. He continued to write and soon finished copying. He put away his brush. I'm done. The Sun Moon Tier elite took the copy but didn't flip through it. Instead, he immediately sealed it with a decree. In this way, it would be easily discovered if it was opened before being handed over. You can leave first. After we appraise the level of this movement technique, you will naturally be rewarded according to your contributions. Ling Han nodded, bowed, and left. He was very busy now. He had pill recipes to comprehend, and he had movement techniques to practice. Moreover, he was probably not far from the peak stage of the pinnacle level. After that, he would have to comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth of the Sun Moon Tier. This would definitely take a very long time. He felt that he didn't have enough time. Ling Han cultivated in seclusion. One moment he would comprehend pill recipes and the next he would practice the star plucking step. Time passed quietly without him realizing it. However, a dark ripple quietly appeared, and it was becoming more and more intense. Gao Huang complained to the sect, accusing Ling Han of wantonly slaughtering fellow disciples in the mystery realm, and stealing the 1,000-source true fluid that originally belonged to the Gao faction. At first, this matter was kept to the higher-ups of the sect, and not many people knew about it. However, suddenly, this news spread throughout the entire Majestic Heaven sect, and all the disciples knew about it. Instantly an uproar broke out. It was a great taboo for sect disciples to kill each other, and they would be looked down upon by everyone. However, there were still many disciples in the sect at the Eagle Beak Mountain, and they learned part of the truth at that time. Ling Han had suppressed everyone, and obtained 4 drops of 1,000-source true fluid. However, no one knew whether the members of the Gao faction had died at Ling Han's hands or not. This was because the battle had taken place after the competition for the 1,000-source true fluid had ended, so no one knew the truth. However, the Majestic Heaven sect didn't just have disciples at the Mountain River Tier. There were also disciples at the Sun Moon Tier. Moreover, only a small portion of people had discovered the truth at the time. Now, rumors of Ling Han killing his fellow disciples for the sake of the 1,000-source true fluid were everywhere. As time passed, even the lies had become the truth. Killing others and stealing their treasures, and moreover, they were fellow disciples of the same sect, so this was naturally hated by others. Ling Han's newly rising reputation was immediately dealt a heavy blow, and many people expressed their disdain for him. How could such a person be worthy of staying in the sect? Wave after wave of voices rang out, demanding that Ling Han be severely punished. Otherwise, it wouldn't be enough to appease their anger. Chapter 1204. Ling Han decided to play it by ear. Although there were rumors circulating in the sect that were detrimental to him, that was only true for the wise. He believed that those who could enter into the Majestic Heaven sect were naturally all intelligent people. As this kind of rumor continued to spread, it should very quickly lose its market value. He still went to the Mo clan establishment and sold a large number of alchemical pills. Moreover, he also made a copy of the pill recipe. This was an ancient recipe that might have been lost in the modern world. He should be able to sell it for a good price. He also decided to sell the 1,000-source true fluid. Don't you want it, Gao Huang? I won't give it to you. Ling Han really didn't need the 1,000-source true fluid. It could only help him comprehend Tao, but it couldn't increase his cultivation level. Comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree couldn't increase his comprehension ability, but he could make up for it with time. If he couldn't comprehend it in a day or two, what about 8 or 10 years? This was equivalent to a different kind of 1,000-source true fluid, and it was endless. Thus, Ling Han naturally wanted to sell the 1,000-source true fluid to increase his wealth, so that he could buy godly metal to increase the quality of the divine demon sword. In any case, before the divine demon sword reached the quality of divine metal, Ling Han was destined to be poor. If he had any money, he would have to spend it on the divine demon sword. However, the divine demon sword's might had already begun to show, and it was no weaker than Ling Han's battle prowess. It would be worth it no matter how much money he spent. He told Han Hua this, and the latter was immediately stunned. He then happily agreed, and after discussing with Ling Han, they decided to hold an auction. The auction items would be the 1,000-source true fluid, ancient pill recipes, and alchemical pills that Ling Han had provided. Good things like the 1,000-source true fluid and ancient pill recipes had to be auctioned to maximize their value. As for the alchemical pills, they could definitely be sold for a higher price than usual. Businessmen were indeed different. They were much more thorough and meticulous than Ling Han. Ling Han nodded and left everything to Han Hua to handle. Meanwhile, he returned to the majestic heaven sect. He still had to cultivate the star-plucking step and comprehend new pill recipes. When he returned to the palace, he saw that the old ginseng was currently chatting and laughing with Li Weiwei and Jiuner. He was massaging the two girls' shoulders, and one of his ginseng roots took the opportunity to reach into the girls' collars in search of serenity. This ginseng is hopeless. Although you have transformed into a human form, you are only the size of a child's arm. What can you do? Ling Han shook his head, but what were Li Weiwei and the other girl doing here? You blockhead, you actually dared to hide this from us. Li Weiwei immediately jumped up upon reaching Ling Han, causing the old ginseng to clench his teeth in anger. That was because one of his ginseng roots had been stuck in Li Weiwei's chest, and he hadn't been able to pull it out in time. Li Weiwei didn't notice at all that Ling Han had arrived. He just snickered to himself. Who asked the old ginseng to take advantage of her? Just nice, this ginseng root would be his compensation to Li Weiwei. The roots of the old ginseng were indeed extremely nutritious. Ling Han had only plucked one root and consumed it. The rest were deposited on the body of the old ginseng. Now that Li Weiwei had unintentionally obtained one, it was naturally greatly beneficial to her cultivation and physique. Ling Han smiled faintly and asked, "How did you guys find out?" I don't believe that Big Sister Shui is the kind of person who would change her mind at the sight of someone else. Thus, I pestered the ninth king to ask her, and she quickly spilled the secret, Li Weiwei said proudly. True enough, this girl Hu Feiyun was completely unreliable. She was a clone of Empress Luanxing, and her personality was a part of the Empress. Thus, it was inevitable that there would be some imperfections in her personality, and some of her personality would be magnified to the extreme. For example, Hu Feiyun was naive and muddle-headed. This was a personality that Empress Luanxing had severed. At first, it was only a small part of Empress Luanxing, but now it was Hu Feiyun's entire personality. Blockhead, what do you plan to do? Everyone outside is talking about you killing people and stealing their treasures. Li Weiwei quickly put aside the matter of Ling Han hiding his identity, and began to worry for him. It's fine. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. There's nothing I can't deal with, Ling Han said with a smile. You sure talk big. Li Weiwei humphed. However, seeing that Ling Han was brimming with confidence, she also relaxed. After all, Ling Han had come out of the chaotic star's majestic empire, and had encountered many dangers, but hadn't he resolved all of them? Feng Peyun, Ding Ping, and the others came over to ask, but were also calmly comforted by Ling Han, and they left. He could handle this matter by himself. However, in the next few days, Ling Han didn't have any time to properly cultivate. Xiao Sisi, Xiao Wuk, Su Jing, and the others all came over, and extended an olive branch to Ling Han. As long as Ling Han was willing to join their camp, they would do their best to help Ling Han resolve this problem. Ling Han smiled and declined. He didn't plan to join anyone. Wasn't he cultivating so hard for the sake of breathing the air of freedom and being his true self? Afterward, He Tao and the other king tiers also came over, and said the same words as Xiao Sisi and the others. They wanted to recruit Ling Han. This was because Ling Han had come from a small world, and he had no roots in the immortal realm. Thus, they didn't have to worry about recruiting him and entrusting him with an important task, only to discover that he was a spy from another sect. Ling Han naturally wouldn't agree. At this moment, News suddenly spread that the sect was seriously considering the matter of Ling Han slaughtering his fellow disciples. It was possible that a public trial would be held in a few days. Gao Huang was finally going to show his sword. On the same night that the news spread, a Sun Moon tier elite appeared in front of Ling Han's palace. "I am Zhou Tong." This Sun Moon tier elite looked to be in his 30s, but he had already formed 2 suns and moons. His strength was truly terrifying. There was a proud expression on his face, and he said, "I've come on the orders of the young master. I'll give you one last chance. Immediately hand over 4 drops of 1000 source true fluid. Otherwise, you'll be regarded as the eternal sinner of the sect, and forever be nailed to the pillar of shame." Ling Han smiled and said, "Why would you rather be a lackey for someone else than be a Sun Moon tier elite? How dare you?" Zhou Tong was instantly enraged, and divine flames roared around his body. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Don't be so fierce to me. You've only cultivated for a few 100,000 years more than me. Do you believe that I'll be able to beat you up in another 10 years? These words were extremely domineering. A mountain river tier cultivator actually said that he would be able to beat an elite at the medium extreme of the Sun Moon tier in 10 years? Who would believe him? However, Zhou Tong's pupils contracted. With this brat's freakish cultivation speed, it really was possible, though he didn't really believe it. He humphed and said, "If you don't hand over the 1000 source true fluid, you won't be able to survive this trial at all." "What 10 years? Ling Han smiled faintly. He now had the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, and there was also a Red Rain Divine King tree in the Black Tower. Once he advanced to the Sun Moon tier, he would definitely be able to refine many Berserk Blood Spirit pills. It could be imagined that his cultivation level would increase by leaps and bounds at some point in time. Go back and tell Gao Huang that if he wants the 1000 source true fluid, he'll have to bring enough true origin stones and participate in the auction in 3 months, Ling Han said. This was a good opportunity to advertise for free. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1205. Zhou Tong left with his fury and Ling Han's reply. He, a mighty elite of the Sun Moon tier, was actually being threatened by a mountain river tier cultivator. This made him very displeased, but who asked him to be the one to deliver himself to Ling Han on his own accord? If he reported this to the sect, it would only be disadvantageous to him. As long as Ling Han still had the identity of a seed, no one could humiliate him. The news that the Mo clan establishment was going to auction the 1000 source origin quickly caused a huge uproar. This auction also received the full support of the Mo clan main family. They mobilized the entire Mo clan main family to spread the news. Thus, the news quickly spread throughout the entire galaxy. Even many heavenly body tier elites were tempted. The 1000 source true fluid had been formed by an eternal river tier elite, and with the comprehension of heaven and earth at this level, it was a precious treasure even to heavenly body tier elites. Perhaps it couldn't allow the peak stage of the heavenly body tier to break through to the eternal river tier, but it was still very possible for the low extreme of the heavenly body tier to break through to the medium extreme to break through to the high extreme, and so on. And what does it mean to take such a step forward? His strength would undergo earth-shattering changes, and his lifespan would increase by 10 million years. 10 million years. With such a long period of time, he might be able to obtain new opportunities and advance to a higher realm. Thus, not only were Sun Moon tier elites tempted, but even many heavenly body tier elites were also heading toward the flying cloud planet. This was also the reason why the auction would be held 3 months later. It was to give the investors enough time to rush over. Of course, the Mo clan had also invited some alchemists. This group of people were truly wealthy, and for the sake of ancient pill recipes, they would definitely fight for a price that would make one speechless. Ling Han didn't need to do anything. He had given Han Hua full authority over the auction. All he needed to do was hand over the 1000 source true fluid to Han Hua on the day of the auction. He didn't hand over the 1000 source true fluid now because it was safest to leave it with Ling Han. Due to the preciousness of the 1000 source true fluid, this auction instantly became the hottest topic. However, the Gao faction's actions were also becoming more and more exaggerated. Evidently, they wanted to get hold of Ling Han before the auction. Otherwise, once he was on the auction stage, they could only compete with their wealth. However, the majestic heaven sect wasn't the Gao faction. Senior apprentice brother Han. That night, a guest came to pay a visit. Fanru led the other in. She was a charming beauty with an enchanting figure. She was so charming that it seemed like water could drip from her body. She curtsied towards Ling Han and said, "This little sister is Ji Yunji. Junior sister Ji, what's the matter?" Ling Han asked casually, as if he had not noticed that the person standing in front of him was a seductress that could make one blush and palpitate. Fanru, who was at the side, did not even dare to look Ji Yunji in the eye, afraid that her soul would be taken away. Ji Yunji was astonished. She was naturally very clear about how charming she was. This was not only because she was born beautiful, but also because she deliberately walked the path of seduction. It was also because of the cultivation method that she cultivated, which allowed her to be dazzling and moving. Every move she made emitted a seductive and sexy feeling. But Ling Han didn't even look her in the eye, which was unacceptable to her. Usually, men could not wait to stick their eyes on her body, but Ling Han seemed to be too lazy to even look at her. She calmed her mind and said, "This little sister has come on the orders of young master Hua Yongwen Hua. I wish to ask for Brother Ling's convenience in selling a drop of 1,000 source true fluid to the Hua faction." Hua faction. Ling Han gave an O. After becoming enemies with the Gao faction, he specially went to investigate, and found out that among the 9 disciples of Venerable Trinity, there was a disciple called Hua Yongning, who was ranked 6. Then, this Hua faction was naturally the faction that Hua Yongning had established. Additionally, Gao Feng was ranked 4th among the 9 great disciples. Though this was only based on the order of their master to a certain extent, it was also a ranking of the faction's strength. Ho, young master will not let senior brother Ling suffer a loss. Ji Yunji smiled sweetly. What young mistress means is for senior apprentice brother Ling to only auction off 3 drops of 1,000 source true fluid, and young mistress will purchase it at the same price as the lowest of the 3 drops. This indeed could not be counted as letting Ling Han suffer a loss, because if 4 drops of 1,000 source true fluid were to be auctioned together, then the cheapest drop might be lower than the lowest price of 3 drops being auctioned together. After all, the smaller the quantity, the more intense the bidding. For my sake, the Hua faction is going to start a war with the Gao faction? Ling Han asked. Ho, any sect is filled with competition. As the saying goes, the weak are the strong, and the strong survive, Ji Yunji said calmly. Among the 9 disciples of Venerable Trinity, only one can obtain the final true inheritance, and shoulder the great responsibility of leading the majestic heaven sect. Thus, even if it was not for senior brother Han, the Hua faction and the Gao faction would not be able to avoid a war. Ling Han nodded. The lower levels had the competition of the lower levels, and the upper levels had the competition of the upper levels. How covetous was the inheritance of the eternal river Tyr! If one obtained it, who knew, they might be able to sweep through this galaxy and become the only king. How many people could resist such a temptation? No wonder those 9 disciples had all established their own factions, all for the sake of increasing their own bargaining chips, so that they could obtain the true inheritance. However, Venerable Trinity did not express his stance even after a long time, and even had the intention of taking Yang Hao as his 10th disciple. This was actually sending out a signal that Venerable Trinity was not very satisfied with these 9 disciples. If the 9 disciples fought fiercely now, it was very possible that they would end up empty-handed when the time came, with nothing to gain. Ling Han smiled. What did this have to do with him? He thought for a moment and said, "All right, I can leave 1 drop of 1,000 source true fluid for young Master Hua." In any case, he would not suffer a loss. Senior brother Han is indeed a man of character. I thank you on behalf of young master in advance. Ji Yunji stood up and curtsied towards Ling Han. Her neck hung low, revealing a large patch of snow-white skin on her chest, and the bulge was impressively voluptuous. What a seductive beauty! Ling Han's expression was calm. He had often been seduced by Shui Yinyu, this great vixen, so he naturally had an extremely strong resistance to temptation. Furthermore, compared to the exceptional beauty of Empress Luanxing, Ji Yunji was at the level of a village girl, so how could his heart possibly be disturbed? Ji Yunji raised her head and saw that Ling Han's expression was calm. There was not the slightest sign of accelerated heartbeat or rapid breathing, and she couldn't help but be filled with curiosity. According to her understanding at this moment, Ling Han's lower body should have already reacted, and he would make a fool of himself in front of her. Then, she would be able to gain a psychological advantage, and if she stated some conditions, Ling Han would probably agree without any hesitation in his flustered state. This guy doesn't like women? Ji Yunji guessed in her mind, but this was naturally not something that she could ask aloud. She spoke without saying anything, and took the opportunity to seduce Ling Han a few more times. However, it was all to no avail, and she could only leave in resignation. Good milk. The old ginseng popped out from somewhere, and looked as if he was fuming with rage at Ling Han. That little thing is obviously seducing you. Why don't you do it? Even if you don't do it, you should still let her take it off, and let Grandpa Ginseng have a feast for my eyes. Get lost. Ling Han kicked out. This perverted ginseng was definitely beyond saving. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.